What's going on, everyone? It's Ben 10 What If here. We've got something amazing for you today. What if Ben 10 reborn in MHA universe and fell for Momo? Real quick, if you haven't subscribed yet, what are you waiting for? Join thousands of story lovers and hit that subscribe button. Alright, story time. Chapter 1, Stranger in a familiar world. The dreams always came in fragments, flashes of green light, alien worlds, and a watch that could transform him into incredible beings. Benjiro Tenjo woke with a gasp, his right wrist tingling as it had for years, the device there pulsing with subdued green light. He'd long since stopped trying to remove it, the strange watch-like mechanism was as much a part of him as his own heartbeat. Ben 10, he whispered to himself, the nickname from his dreams feeling both alien and intimately familiar on his tongue. 15 years old, and still he couldn't separate reality from these persistent visions of another life. Morning light filtered through his blinds as Benjiro swung his legs over the side of his bed, studying the device on his wrist. To everyone else, it was his quirk, transform, they called it, allowing him to change into 10 different forms with unique abilities. But Benjiro knew deep down it was something more, something beyond this world's understanding of superpowers. Benjiro. You'll be late for the entrance exam. His mother's voice carried up the stairs. Coming, he called back, pulling on his training clothes. Today was the day, UA High School's Hero Course entrance exam. The most prestigious hero school in Japan, and his chance to finally put his strange abilities to good use. His mother met him at the bottom of the stairs, concern etched across her features as she straightened his collar. Are you sure about this? There are other schools with excellent general education programs. Mom, we've talked about this. Benjiro offered a reassuring smile. I have this power for a reason. I need to learn how to use it properly. Haruko Tenjo sighed, brushing her son's unruly brown hair out of his eyes. I know. You've always been drawn to heroics, even before your quirk manifested. She glanced down at the strange watch-like device. I just worry. That thing appeared on you so suddenly when you were 10. Benjiro remembered that day vividly, a burst of green light in the night sky, a strange feeling of déjà vu, and then waking up with the device fused to his wrist. The doctors had been baffled, eventually classifying it as an unprecedented quirk manifestation. I'll be careful, he promised, grabbing a piece of toast. Besides, I've got a good handle on most of the transformations now. His mother's eyes softened. Your father would have been so proud. The mention of his father, gone 3 years now in a villain attack, sent a pang through Benjiro's chest. I know, he said quietly. That's another reason I have to do this. The train ride to UA campus was crowded with other hopeful examinees. Benjiro found a spot by the window, watching the city blur past while his mind drifted. The dreams had been more frequent lately, battles against creatures called aliens, a grandfather named Max, a cousin named Gwen. And always the watch, the Omnitrix, his sleeping mind called it. Excuse me, is this seat taken? Benjiro looked up to see a tall girl with an asymmetrical fringe, her dark hair pulled into a spiky ponytail. She carried herself with a natural elegance that immediately caught his attention. It's all yours, he replied, moving his bag. Thank you. She sat down gracefully. Are you also taking the UA entrance exam? Benjiro nodded. Hero course. Same. She offered a polite smile. I'm Yaoyorozu Momo. Tenjo Benjiro. He found himself strangely captivated by her calm confidence. What's your quirk, if you don't mind me asking? Creation. She gestured to her arms. I can create any non-living material from my body as long as I understand its molecular structure. Benjiro's eyes widened. That's amazing. The applications are practically unlimited. A pleased blush touched Momo's cheeks. Thank you. I've studied extensively to maximize its potential. What about yours? Benjiro hesitated before lifting his wrist. It's called transform. I can change into different forms with different abilities. Momo leaned forward, her dark eyes lighting with intellectual curiosity. Fascinating. Is it similar to a heteromorphic transformation quirk, or something else entirely? Something else. Benjiro felt a strange compulsion to tell her more than he'd ever told anyone about his power. Each form is completely different, different abilities, different strengths and weaknesses. That's quite versatile, she observed. Though I imagine controlling multiple distinct forms must require considerable practice. Before Benjiro could respond, the train slowed as they approached UA station. Their conversation shifted to the upcoming exam, but something lingered in Benjiro's mind, a strange sense of connection to this girl he'd just met. The UA campus sprawled before them, modern and imposing. Hundreds of students gathered in the main auditorium for orientation, where the pro-hero present Mike explained the practical exam, defeat robots and rescue civilians for points. Sounds straightforward enough, Benjiro muttered, fingers hovering over the Omnitrix. He'd already decided which transformations would work best against robots. As the students dispersed to their assigned testing grounds, Benjiro caught sight of Momo heading to a different area. She gave him a small nod and a "good luck," which he returned with a wave. Testing Ground C was an elaborate mock city, complete with crumbling buildings and narrow streets. Benjiro gathered with the other examinees at the entrance, sizing up the competition. Some looked nervous, others confident, a few were stretching or warming up their quirks. Begin. Present Mick's voice boomed without warning, startling the group. While others hesitated, Benjiro immediately activated his Omnitrix, twisting the dial until the silhouette he wanted appeared. With a press, green light engulfed him. His body grew taller, more muscular, his skin hardening to a crystalline substance. Diamond Head, he called out instinctively, then blinked in confusion at his own outburst. Where had that name come from? No time to dwell on it. Benjiro, now a crystalline humanoid, sprinted into the testing ground. His enhanced strength and durability made him perfect for close-quarters combat with the robots. He morphed his arm into a sharp blade, slicing through a two-pointer robot with ease. What kind of transformation quirk is that? A nearby examinee gasped. Benjiro didn't answer, leaping to intercept a three-pointer that was bearing down on a group of students. He fired crystal shards from his hands, piercing the robot's optical sensors before finishing it with a powerful punch that shattered its core. Throughout the test, he switched between forms strategically, using XLR-8's incredible speed to cover ground quickly, Heat Blast to melt through multiple robots at once, and 4 arms to rescue trapped examinees from collapsed buildings. Each transformation felt increasingly natural, like remembering how to ride a bicycle. But with each shift came flashes of memory, fighting alongside a team called the Plumbers, battling enemies with names like Vilgax and Kevin 11. The images were so vivid they nearly distracted him from the exam. As the final minutes ticked down, Benjiro heard a scream. A massive zero-pointer robot, the obstacle present Mike had warned them about, was advancing through the center of the mock city, its massive treads crushing everything in its path. Most examinees were running in the opposite direction. Not Benjiro. Something deep inside, a hero's instinct that transcended worlds, drove him forward. He spotted a student trapped beneath debris, directly in the robot's path. Without hesitation, he slammed his hand down on the Omnitrix again, transforming into a small, frog-like alien form. Gray matter, he murmured, again surprised by the automatic naming. This form was his smartest, with intelligence that let him quickly analyze the robot's structural weaknesses. After a quick assessment, he transformed again into a massive form that looked like a living battery. Feedback. Energy crackled between his fingertips as he absorbed power from nearby electrical systems, redirecting it in a massive blast that overloaded the zero-pointer circuits. The giant robot stuttered, smoke pouring from its joints. Benjiro wasn't finished. One more transformation, into a phantom-like being he somehow knew was called Ghost Freak, allowed him to phase through the robot's exterior and disable its power core from within. The zero-pointer collapsed, shutting down mere feet from the trapped student. Reverting to his human form, Benjiro's head pounded with fragmented memories. He staggered slightly, then focused on helping the trapped examinee. That was incredible, the student gasped as Benjiro lifted the debris. You went through so many transformations so quickly. Thanks, Benjiro replied, helping them stand. Are you okay? Before they could answer, the buzzer sounded, signaling the end of the exam. Benjiro had lost count of his points, but he felt confident he'd done well. As the examinees gathered at the exit, he noticed several giving him curious looks. Dude, how many forms do you have? A boy with spiky red hair asked excitedly. 10, Benjiro answered simply, though lately he'd been feeling like there might be more locked within the Omnitrix, waiting to be discovered. As they left the testing grounds, Benjiro spotted Momo among the examinees from testing ground A. She looked composed despite the rigorous exam, though a few tears in her uniform suggested she hadn't emerged entirely unscathed. Their eyes met across the crowd, and she gave him an approving nod. Benjiro felt an unexpected warmth spread through his chest. The written exam followed, and while Benjiro wasn't the academic prodigy he suspected Momo was, the strange flashes of scientific knowledge from his dreams, alien technology, advanced physics, xenobiology, helped him through the more difficult questions. A week later, Benjiro sat in his living room, nervously eyeing the holographic message from UA. His mother squeezed his shoulder encouragingly as All Might's larger-than-life projection announced his acceptance into the Hero course, Class 1A, with one of the highest practical scores in the exam's history. I'm so proud of you, his mother said, eyes glistening. Your father would be too. Benjiro nodded, emotion tightening his throat. As All Might's message continued, highlighting his rescue points in particular, Benjiro couldn't help but feel like he was following a path that had been set for him long before, in another life, another universe. That night, the dreams were more vivid than ever. With great power comes great responsibility, Ben, an elderly man said, his kind face somehow both familiar and foreign. I know, Grandpa Max, his own voice replied, younger but unmistakably his. I've learned that the hard way. The scene shifted to a vast green expanse of energy, a sense of sacrifice, of letting go. Benjiro woke with tears streaming down his face, the Omnitrix pulsing gently on his wrist. For the first time, he was certain, these weren't dreams. They were memories. His first day at UA arrived with cherry blossoms swirling through the spring air. Benjiro stood before the imposing Class 1A door, taking a deep breath before sliding it open. Inside, students were already gathering, some chatting, others sizing each other up. Ah, Tenjo-san. A familiar voice caught his attention. Momo Yaoyorozu approached with a warm smile. I'm glad you made it in. You too, Benjiro replied, genuinely pleased to see her. Though I'm not surprised, given what you told me about your quirk. You were quite impressive yourself in the practical exam, from what I heard, she said. Someone mentioned you took down the zero-pointer in your testing ground. Before he could respond, a stern-looking boy with glasses approached them. Excuse me, I am Ida Tenya from Semi-Private Academy. I couldn't help overhearing, you defeated the zero-pointer. That's remarkable. I just did what anyone would do, Benjiro said, uncomfortable with the attention. There was someone trapped in its path. Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of their homeroom teacher, a disheveled man who introduced himself as Aizawa Shoyuta. His blunt introduction and immediate demand that they change into gym clothes for a quirk assessment test set the tone for UA's rigorous approach. Tenjo, Aizawa called as they headed to the changing rooms. A word. Benjiro approached nervously as the other students filed out. Your quirk registration is unusual, Aizawa said without preamble. 10 distinct transformation forms, all with different abilities. The medical records note the device appeared suddenly when you were 10. Benjiro nodded, instinctively covering the Omnitrix with his other hand. Yes, sir. Aizawa's tired eyes studied him carefully. And you have complete control over all forms? I've been practicing since it appeared, Benjiro answered carefully. Some forms are more difficult to control than others, but I've managed to master most of them. Aizawa seemed unconvinced. UA has extensive support facilities if you need help understanding or controlling your quirk better. Don't hesitate to use them. His eyes narrowed slightly. And don't push yourself beyond your limits just to impress anyone. I understand, sir. The quirk assessment test that followed pushed everyone to their limits. Benjiro used different transformations strategically, forearms for the grip strength test, XLR-8 for the 50-meter dash, and cannonbolt for the ball throw. Each transformation earned impressed murmurs from his classmates, but he noticed Aizawa watching him with calculating eyes. When it came to the ball throw, Benjiro decided to try something different. Instead of using raw strength, he transformed into a small, technologically advanced alien form he somehow knew was called Upgrade. Merging with the ball itself, he could control its trajectory perfectly, sending it soaring to land at exactly 705.3 meters. Whoa! He became the ball, exclaimed a pink-skinned girl named Ashido. That's not just transformation, added a frog-like girl called Azui. He actually merged with the object, Karo. As Benjiro returned to his human form, he caught Momo watching him with intense curiosity. Unlike the other's more exuberant reactions, her expression was thoughtful, analytical, as if she was trying to solve a puzzle. When the results were displayed, Benjiro placed third overall, behind Momo and a dual quirk user named Todoroki. Aizawa's threat of expulsion for the lowest scoring student turned out to be a logical ruse to motivate them, though Benjiro suspected he would have followed through if necessary. As they headed back to the classroom, Momo fell into step beside him. Your quirk is unlike any transformation ability I've seen documented, she said quietly. Each form seems to operate on completely different principles. Benjiro hesitated. Yeah, it's unique. The small technological form you used for the ball throw, it looked almost like you became living technology. Upgrade, Benjiro said automatically, then blinked in surprise at himself. You name your forms? Momo asked, intrigued. I guess I do, Benjiro admitted. It helps me keep track of their abilities. They continued chatting about their respective quirks as they returned to the classroom. Benjiro found himself drawn to Momo's analytical mind and extensive knowledge. There was something refreshing about her approach to heroics, methodical, thoughtful, but driven by genuine desire to help others. The next few days established UA's grueling pace. Benjiro excelled in practical hero training but struggled with some academic subjects. During a study session in the library, he found himself sitting across from Momo, who had offered to help him with modern hero history. The thing is, he admitted, sometimes I feel like I know things I shouldn't, and then there are gaps in what should be basic knowledge. Momo looked up from her textbook. What do you mean? Benjiro tapped his pencil against the table, choosing his words carefully. I know complex physics theories I never studied, but then I'll forget something simple like when quirks first appeared in society. That is unusual, Momo agreed. Perhaps it's related to your quirk. Some transformation types report knowledge acquisition as a side effect. Maybe, Benjiro said, though he knew it was more complicated than that. Their first heroics class with All Might brought fresh challenges, battle training in teams of 2. Benjiro was paired with a gravity-manipulating girl named Uraraka against Momo and a bird-headed student named Tokoyami. Man, we got tough opponents, Uraraka said nervously as they prepared. Yaoyorozu-san came in on recommendation, and her quirk is super versatile. So is yours, Benjiro encouraged her. If we coordinate well, we can win this. Their objective as the hero team was to either capture the villains or secure the mock weapon within 15 minutes. As they waited for the exercise to begin, Benjiro considered his strategy carefully. I'll transform into something fast to scout ahead, he told Uraraka. Then we can decide the best approach based on what defenses they've set up. Uraraka nodded determinedly. I can make us both weightless to get past obstacles or climb quickly if needed. When the exercise began, Benjiro transformed into XLR-8, a speed-based alien with a streamlined body and a visor-like face. He zipped through the building's lower floors, careful to avoid detection. He found Momo and Tokoyami on the third floor, the mock weapon behind them. Momo had already created defensive barricades, metal shields, and what looked like capture nets. Tokoyami's dark shadow prowled the perimeter, an effective guard against intruders. Speeding back to Uraraka, Benjiro quickly outlined what he'd seen. They've got a solid defensive setup, but I noticed the floor above them has some structural weaknesses. If you can make me weightless, I have a form that could break through from above. The plan set, they moved quickly. Uraraka used her quirk on Benjiro, who then transformed into Four Arms, a massive, four-armed alien with tremendous strength. Floating silently up to the fourth floor, he positioned himself above where he knew the weapon room was. Meanwhile, Uraraka created a distraction at the main entrance, drawing Tokoyami's attention. At the agreed signal, Benjiro smashed through the floor, dropping directly into the room as Uraraka released her quirk. Momo reacted instantly, pulling a flash grenade from her arm and throwing it at him. Benjiro barely had time to transform again, this time into Diamond Head, whose crystalline body deflected the blinding light. Impressive reaction time, Yaoyorozu, he called out, genuinely admiring her quick thinking. Your transformation speed has improved since the assessment test, she replied, already creating a capture gun from her shoulder. What followed was an intense battle of wits as much as abilities. Every time Momo created a new weapon or trap, Benjiro countered with a different transformation. When she launched an electromagnetic pulse device to disable what she thought was a technologically based alien, he switched to Heat Blast, a fire-based form immune to electronics disruption. Tokoyami returned from the entrance, dark shadow lunging at Benjiro. The shadow creature was powerful, but Benjiro countered by transforming into a phosphorescent jellyfish-like alien he somehow knew was called Amphibian, whose bright electrical discharges weakened dark shadow. Throughout the battle, Benjiro felt a strange exhilaration, not just from the combat, but from matching wits with Momo. Each move she made was calculated, resourceful, forcing him to think creatively about his transformations. Uraraka finally managed to slip past during the chaos, touching the mock weapon just seconds before time expired. The hero team wins. All Might's voice boomed through the speakers. Back in the monitoring room, their classmates buzzed with excitement over the match. Tenjo's transformations are so cool. Kaminari exclaimed. Did you see how fast he switched between them? But Yaoyorozu was amazing too, Ashido added. She created exactly the right counter for each form. All Might's analysis highlighted both teams' strengths and weaknesses. Young Tenjo, excellent adaptability with your transformations, though you relied too heavily on power types early on. Young Yaoyorozu, outstanding strategic thinking and quirk application, but consider creating larger defensive structures to secure the objective more thoroughly. As they left the training ground, Benjiro found himself walking alongside Momo. You were incredible, he said sincerely. You countered almost every form I used. Almost, she replied with a small smile. Your versatility is remarkable. I've been researching transformation quirks, and yours defies conventional categorization. Something in her tone made Benjiro wonder just how much she'd noticed about his abilities. The thought both worried and intrigued him. Could she be someone he might eventually trust with the truth, if he ever fully understood it himself? That night, the dreams were more coherent than ever before. He saw himself, a younger version, maybe 13 or 14, facing a massive alien creature with tentacles and red eyes. The Omnitrix was never meant for you, Ben Tennyson, the creature growled. Its power belongs to me, Vilgax, conqueror of 10 worlds. Sorry, Squid Face, his younger self retorted, but the watch and I are kind of a package deal now. Benjiro woke with a gasp, the name Vilgax echoing in his mind. The Omnitrix glowed softly in the darkness of his room. On impulse, he touched it gently and whispered, "Who am I?" To his shock, the device projected a small hologram, an older man with kind eyes and a Hawaiian shirt. The image flickered unstably, but the voice came through clearly enough. "Ben, if you're seeing this, the quantum signature transfer was successful. Your consciousness, your memories, they're integrating with your new existence. The Omnitrix served as the conduit, preserving your core identity through the universal breach. Remember who you were, but embrace who you're becoming. You've been given a second chance for a reason." The hologram flickered and died, leaving Benjiro in darkness, heart pounding. It wasn't just dreams or imagination. He really had lived another life, been another person named Ben Tennyson. Somehow, his consciousness had transferred to this world, this body, bringing the Omnitrix with it. But why? And how much of Benjiro Tenjo had existed before Ben's consciousness arrived? The questions kept him awake until dawn, when he finally fell into an exhausted sleep, missing his alarm. He arrived at UA barely on time, dark circles under his eyes. "Are you alright, Tenjo-kun?" Momo asked as he dropped into his seat. "You look like you didn't sleep." "Just stayed up too late," he mumbled, not meeting her eyes. How could he possibly explain what he'd discovered? The day's lessons passed in a blur until they reached foundational hero studies. All Might announced they would be practicing rescue scenarios at an off-campus facility called the Unforeseen Simulation Joint, or USJ. Rescue is a vital hero skill, All Might explained, his perpetual smile somehow more serious today. Even with powerful combat quirks, your first priority should always be saving lives. On the bus ride to the USJ, Benjiro sat quietly, still processing the previous night's revelation. He barely noticed when someone sat beside him until they spoke. "You seem distracted today." He turned to find Momo watching him with concern. "Sorry," he said. "Just thinking about rescue work." She studied him for a moment longer than necessary. "Your quirk has several forms well suited for rescue operations. The speed form, the strength form, and I noticed during training you have one that can phase through solid matter." "Ghost Freak," Benjiro confirmed automatically. "Though that one's complicated to control." "You speak about your forms as if they have personalities of their own," Momo observed. The comment hit closer to home than she could know. In his fragmented memories, each alien form did have distinct characteristics that influenced him when transformed. "I guess they do, in a way," he admitted. "Each one feels different when I'm transformed, different instincts, different ways of thinking." Momo's expression became even more intrigued. "Fascinating. Most transformation quirks maintain the user's consciousness unchanged while altering physical attributes. Yours seems to affect cognitive patterns as well." Before Benjiro could respond, they arrived at the USJ, an enormous domed facility containing multiple disaster zones for different rescue scenarios. The Space Hero 13 greeted them with a speech about the dangerous potential of quirks and the responsibility heroes carried. Benjiro found himself nodding along, the words resonating deeply with fragments of memory, lessons learned in another life about power and responsibility. Just as they were about to begin training, a dark portal materialized in the center of the facility. Villains poured through by the dozens, led by a man covered in severed hands and a massive, bird-beaked creature with an exposed brain. "Students, stay back," Aizawa ordered, pulling on his goggles. 13, protect them while I handle this." As Aizawa leapt into battle against the villains, panic spread through the class. All Might was nowhere to be seen, and they were trapped with dozens of hostile intruders. "We need to evacuate," Ida declared. As class representative, before he could finish, the dark mist villain expanded, engulfing several students. Benjiro felt himself being pulled into the darkness. He reached for Momo instinctively, their fingers barely missing as the warp separated them. Benjiro crashed into water, the flood zone of the USJ. Surfacing quickly, he saw aquatic villains approaching. Without hesitation, he activated the Omnitrix, transforming into a manta ray-like alien he knew as Ripjaws, perfect for underwater combat. He dispatched the villains efficiently, adapting to underwater fighting with practiced ease that felt both new and familiar. Swimming to the shore, he transformed back, scanning for his classmates. Tenjo. Midoriya's voice called. He was with Azuri and Mineta at the shore. Is everyone alright? Benjiro asked, joining them. We managed, Midoriya replied grimly. But Aizawa-sensei is fighting alone against all those villains, and the rest of our class is scattered throughout the facility. Benjiro's mind raced through options, evaluating his available transformations against the current threat. We need to regroup with the others if possible, but also find a way to call for backup. The villain with the warp quirk is their way in and out, Midoriya observed. If we could somehow neutralize him. They crept toward the central plaza, where Aizawa was still fighting valiantly against multiple opponents. To their horror, they arrived just in time to see the bird-like creature, which the hand-covered villain called Momo, brutally overpowering their teacher. We have to help him, Midoriya whispered, preparing to move. Wait, Benjiro grabbed his arm. That thing is on another level. We need a plan. As they watched, the hand-covered villain, Shigaraki, began monologuing about killing All Might. Something about his casual attitude toward violence struck a chord in Benjiro's memory, villains from his past life who saw destruction as a game. I have a form that might be able to help Aizawa-sensei without us being detected, Benjiro said, reaching for the Omnitrix. I'll try to create a diversion while you three find a way to contact the school. That's too dangerous, Azuri protested. I've faced worse, Benjiro replied, though he wasn't entirely sure if that was true in this life or just his fragmented memories. Before they could argue further, Shigaraki somehow detected them, lunging toward Azuri with outstretched fingers. Midoriya reacted instantly, leaping forward with his quirk activated. Benjiro slammed down on the Omnitrix, transforming into XLR-8, and dashed forward at superhuman speed. He managed to pull both Azuri and Midoriya away from Shigaraki's deadly touch, but the villain's attention was now fixed on them. Interesting, Shigaraki tilted his head. A transformation quirk with multiple forms? How annoying, like facing several different opponents at once. The Momo turned toward them, its muscular body tensing to attack. In that moment, Benjiro made a split-second decision, transforming again, this time into a form he rarely used due to its volatile nature, Ghost Freak. His body became ethereal, ghostly white with a single eye and tentacle-like appendages. Get back, he told his classmates, his voice echoing unnaturally. The Momo charged, but its fist passed harmlessly through Ghost Freak's intangible form. Benjiro focused, allowing just his arms to become tangible enough to grab Aizawa's unconscious body, pulling him away from the villains. What is this? Shigaraki scratched his neck furiously. Physical attacks don't work. Momo, keep trying. The Momo's relentless attacks continued to pass through Ghost Freak, but Benjiro felt a familiar, unsettling sensation rising within this form, a separate consciousness, darker and more malevolent than the others, pushing against his control. Let me out, a voice whispered in his mind. Let me show you what true fear is. Benjiro struggled to maintain control, focusing on getting Aizawa to safety. Once clear of immediate danger, he quickly transformed back to human form, gasping. Tenjo-kun, are you okay? Midoriya asked, concerned. Fine, Benjiro managed, though he felt shaken. The Ghost Freak form had always been problematic in his fragmented memories, an alien consciousness with its own agenda. Before the villains could pursue them, a tremendous crash announced All Might's arrival. What followed was a display of power that left even Benjiro, with his memories of cosmic battles, awestruck. All Might's fight with the Momo shook the entire facility, culminating in the creature's defeat. As the pro-heroes arrived to secure the remaining villains, Benjiro found himself searching the scattered students for Momo. He spotted her helping an injured Kyokujiro, relief washing through him at seeing her safe. Their eyes met across the chaotic scene. Even from a distance, he could see the questions in her gaze. She had clearly witnessed some of his transformations during the crisis. Benjiro gave her a tired nod, silently promising explanations would come later. In the aftermath, as they gathered outside the USJ waiting for medical attention and debriefing, Momo approached him. "That ghost form," she said quietly, "it wasn't like the others. You seemed troubled while using it." Benjiro stared at the Omnitrix, which had timed out into recharge mode after the intensive use. "Some transformations are harder to control than others," he admitted. "That one has its own issues." "I see." Momo hesitated, then added, "If you ever need to talk about your quirk, the difficulties or peculiarities, I'd be happy to listen. Sometimes an analytical outside perspective can help." The offer touched him deeply. In his fragmented memories, he recalled having people who understood his burden: his cousin Gwen, his friend Kevin, his grandfather Max. In this new life, he'd kept everyone at arm's length, afraid of revealing too much of his strange dual existence. "I might take you up on that," he said finally. "There's a lot about my quirk that I'm still figuring out myself." As they boarded the buses back to UA, exhausted and shaken by the villain attack, Benjiro felt something shift within him. The memories of Ben Tennyson and the life of Benjiro Tenjo were beginning to feel less like separate existences and more like different chapters of the same story. That night, after being checked over by Recovery Girl and debriefed by the police, Benjiro sat on his bed staring at the Omnitrix. On impulse, he tried activating the hologram he'd seen the night before, but nothing happened. Whatever message had been stored there seemed to have been a one-time playback. His phone chimed with a message. Momo had created a class group chat to check on everyone after the USJ incident. Seeing her name brought a warmth to his chest that had nothing to do with his past life's memories. For the first time since the strange dreams began, Benjiro felt truly present in this world, in this life. Whatever had brought Ben Tennyson's consciousness and the Omnitrix to this universe of heroes, he was beginning to think it wasn't just chance. There was a purpose to his being here, and somehow, he suspected Momo Yaoyorozu would play an important role in discovering what that purpose was. As he drifted to sleep, his dreams shifted away from the past and toward something new, a future in this world, with these people, facing whatever challenges came next. Across town, in an abandoned warehouse, a figure watched news footage of the USJ incident on a small television. The grainy images showed brief glimpses of Benjiro's transformations during the chaos. Finally, the figure murmured, touching a strange device on their wrist, similar to the Omnitrix but glowing with purple light instead of green. "I found you, Tennyson. Different universe, different name, but I'd recognize those transformations anywhere." The purple device pulsed as if in response, and the figure smiled in the darkness. The hunt begins anew. Chapter 2, Secrets Between Worlds. The days following the USJ attack wrapped UA in a tense shroud of heightened security and whispered anxieties. For Benjiro, the villain invasion had shattered any illusion that his new life would be simpler than his old one. Danger, it seemed, would find him regardless of which universe he inhabited. Sleep eluded him most nights, his mind cycling between fragmented memories and present concerns. When he did sleep, the dreams were more vivid than ever, battles across alien worlds, faces of friends and enemies from a life that simultaneously felt distant yet intimately familiar. Each morning he woke with another piece of the puzzle that was Ben Tennyson, the green glow of the Omnitrix a constant reminder of his dual existence. "Benjiro, you're going to be late," his mother called from downstairs. He glanced at the clock and cursed under his breath. Between the dreams and late-night research into his own past life, he'd overslept again. Rushing through his morning routine, he barely made it to the train on time. UA's normally vibrant atmosphere felt subdued as Benjiro entered Class 1A. Several students were already gathered in small groups, discussing the upcoming sports festival. The school's decision to proceed with the high-profile event despite the villain attack had been controversial. "Tenjo-kun." Momo's voice drew his attention as she approached his desk. "You look exhausted. Are you still having trouble sleeping?" Her concern warmed something in his chest. Since the USJ incident, she'd been quietly attentive, observing him with those sharp eyes that seemed to see more than he was comfortable sharing. Just excitement about the sports festival, he lied with a tired smile. Momo studied him a moment longer than necessary. I was wondering if you'd like to join a study group this afternoon. Ida, Midoriya, and I are reviewing tactical applications of quirks for the festival. The invitation surprised him. That sounds helpful, actually. Thanks. Excellent. Library at 4. She hesitated, lowering her voice. And perhaps afterward, we could discuss some of the questions I have about your transformations. Purely academic interest, of course. Before Benjiro could respond, Aizawa entered the classroom, his face still partially bandaged from the USJ injuries. The sight of their teacher's wounds silenced the room immediately. The sports festival is 2 weeks away, Aizawa began without preamble. For many of you, this will be your first opportunity to showcase your abilities to pro heroes and agencies. Use the time wisely to develop strategies that highlight your strengths. As Aizawa outlined the festival's structure, Benjiro's thoughts drifted to the mysterious figure with the purple device. Who were they, and how did they recognize his transformations? The thought that someone from his past life might have followed him to this universe was both hopeful and terrifying. Tenjo. Aizawa's voice snapped him back to attention. Stay after class. When the other students filed out for hero basic training, Benjiro approached Aizawa's desk apprehensively. Your performance during the USJ incident was noteworthy, Aizawa said, his bandaged face unreadable. But I noticed something concerning about one of your transformations, the ghost-like form. Benjiro tensed. Of course Aizawa would have noticed, nothing escaped those eyes. That form seemed to cause you distress, Aizawa continued. Almost as if you were struggling for control. It's complicated, Benjiro admitted. Some forms are harder to maintain than others. Quirks are extensions of ourselves, Tenjo. If you're fighting against your own power, it will eventually break you. Aizawa's eyes narrowed. I've arranged for you to have a session with Hound Dog tomorrow. He specializes in quirk-related psychological issues. I don't think that's necessary, it wasn't a suggestion. Aizawa cut him off. Whatever's happening with your quirk, get it under control before the sports festival. I won't have you endangering yourself or other students. After being dismissed, Benjiro headed to the training grounds, his mind churning. How could he possibly explain to a counselor that his quirk wasn't really a quirk at all, but alien technology from another universe that had somehow merged with his consciousness? The afternoon's hero training focused on rescue techniques, clearly influenced by their experience at the USJ. All Might had them practice evacuating civilians from unstable structures, with some students playing victims while others worked as rescuers. When paired with Todoroki, Benjiro found himself studying the dual quirk user's precise control over his ice powers. Something about the calculated way Todoroki used only half his ability nagged at him. You could stabilize that support beam with your fire side, Benjiro suggested as they worked to extract Uraraka from a collapsed structure simulation. Todoroki's heterochromatic eyes flashed. I don't use my left side. That seems limiting, Benjiro replied, transforming into forearms to lift a heavy concrete slab. We all have our reasons for how we use our powers, Todoroki said coldly, creating an ice slide to evacuate Uraraka safely. Not everyone gets the luxury of cherry-picking abilities like you do. The comment stung, but Benjiro recognized the pain behind it. In his fragmented memories, he recalled his own struggles with the Omnitrix, times when he'd relied too heavily on certain aliens, avoiding others out of fear or discomfort. Perhaps he and Todoroki weren't so different after all. After training, Benjiro headed to the library for the study session. He found Momo already there with Ida and Midoriya, a spread of books and notes organized with military precision before them. Ah, Tenjo-kun. Midoriya greeted enthusiastically. I was hoping to ask about your transformation strategy for the sports festival. Will you focus on versatility or specialize with your stronger forms? The question caught Benjiro off guard. He hadn't given much thought to festival strategy yet, too preoccupied with his identity crisis and the mysterious figure who seemed to know who he was. I'm still figuring that out, he admitted, taking a seat beside Momo. What about you guys? The study session proved more helpful than Benjiro had anticipated. Ida's structured approach to quirk application, Midoriya's deep analytical thinking, and Momo's strategic mind complemented each other well. As they discussed potential scenarios for the festival events, Benjiro found himself genuinely engaged, temporarily setting aside his existential concerns. The first round is typically an obstacle course, Ida explained, gesturing to a diagram he'd drawn. Speed-type quirks have an advantage, but previous years have included obstacles specifically designed to challenge them. Your XLR-8 form would be ideal for straight runs, Momo observed, but what about climbing challenges or precision tasks? I'd probably switch to Stinkfly for aerial obstacles, Benjiro replied, the alien name slipping out naturally now. Or maybe Spider Monkey for climbing. Midoriya's pen moved frantically across his notebook. The versatility of your quirk is incredible, Tenjo-kun. The ability to adapt to any situation gives you a significant advantage over specialists like myself. It's not always an advantage, Benjiro said quietly. Sometimes having too many options makes it harder to choose the right one. The study session continued until early evening, when Ida and Midoriya departed for dinner. As promised, Momo stayed behind, moving to sit directly across from Benjiro with an expression of intellectual determination that made him both nervous and intrigued. So, she began, folding her hands neatly on the table, your transformations. Benjiro swallowed. What about them? They're extraordinary, even by quirk standards. Her dark eyes studied him intently. Most transformation quirks follow consistent biological principles, Tokoyami's dark shadow, Shoji's dupliarms, even Ashido's acid secretion. But yours. She shook her head slightly. Each form operates on completely different biological and physical principles, some seemingly impossible by conventional science. Benjiro remained silent, unsure how to respond without revealing too much. And then there's the device, Momo continued, nodding toward his wrist. At first I thought it might be a focus tool, like Aoima's belt. But it's more integrated than that, isn't it? The transformations emanate from it. You're very observant, Benjiro said finally. It's fascinating, she admitted, a spark of genuine curiosity lighting her eyes. I've been researching transformation quirks extensively, and nothing in the literature describes anything like what you can do. The earnest wonder in her voice disarmed him. Here was someone who didn't fear his differences but was captivated by them, much like Gwen had been in his other life, once she'd moved past their childish rivalry. What if? Benjiro began hesitantly, what if I told you it's not exactly a quirk? Momo's eyebrows rose slightly, but she didn't look skeptical, just more intrigued. Go on. I'm not sure I can explain it fully, he said carefully. I'm still figuring it out myself. But this, he raised his wrist, showing the Omnitrix, is called the Omnitrix. It's technology. Not from here. A support item? Momo questioned, leaning closer to examine it. But those aren't allowed for first years without special dispensation. No, not a support item. Benjiro took a deep breath. It's part of me now. Has been since I was 10. The doctors couldn't explain it, so they classified it as a quirk manifestation. Momo's analytical mind visibly worked through this information. If it's technology that's become biologically integrated with you, that would explain the diverse nature of the transformations. But technology that advanced, where did it come from? Benjiro hesitated, teetering on the edge of a much bigger revelation. Could he trust her with the full truth? About Ben Tennyson, about other universes, about his fragmented memories of another life? Before he could decide, an alarm blared through the library, the emergency evacuation signal. Students scrambled to their feet as an announcement echoed through the speakers. Security breach at the main gate. All students return to classrooms immediately. This is not a drill. Benjiro and Momo exchanged alarmed glances, grabbing their books and rushing into the hallway with other students. The corridors were chaos, students pushing and shoving in panic after the recent USJ attack. "It's just the media," someone shouted from ahead. They broke through the gate. The relief was palpable, but the crowd had already reached dangerous levels of compression. Benjiro felt students being crushed against him from all sides, Momo stumbling as someone shoved past. Acting on instinct, Benjiro activated the Omnitrix, transforming into Ghost Freak, the only form that could move through the crowd without resistance. He grabbed Momo's hand, making her intangible alongside him, and phased them both through the mass of students to a quieter side hallway. Once clear, he quickly transformed back, not wanting to risk losing control of Ghost Freak for too long. "That was quite an experience," Momo said, slightly breathless. "I've never been intangible before." "Sorry if it felt weird," Benjiro replied, suddenly self-conscious about having grabbed her hand. "It was the fastest way out." "No, it was brilliant," she assured him, brushing down her uniform. "Thank you." They stood in momentary silence, the distant sounds of the crowd slowly calming as Ida apparently took control of the situation. "Tenjo-kun," Momo said quietly, "I think we should continue our conversation another time. Somewhere more private." Benjiro nodded, both relieved and anxious about the prospect. "Yeah, that would be good." As they walked back to the classroom, Momo added, "Whatever the full story is about your Omnitrix, I want you to know I find it fascinating, not frightening. And I'm a very good keeper of secrets." The sincerity in her voice touched something deep in Benjiro's chest, a longing for connection, for someone in this new life who might understand the complexity of who he was. The next 2 weeks flew by in a flurry of preparation for the sports festival. Benjiro split his time between training, reluctant sessions with Hound Dog, where he carefully avoided mentioning alternate universes or past lives, and stolen moments with Momo discussing the Omnitrix in cautious, theoretical terms. He hadn't told her everything yet, the cosmic origins, his dual consciousness, the fragmented memories of Ben Tennyson's life. But he'd shared enough about the Omnitrix's functioning that she'd begun helping him analyze transformation patterns and energy consumption rates. The night before the festival, Benjiro sat cross-legged on his bed, the Omnitrix glowing softly as he attempted once more to access its deeper functions. In his fragmented memories, he recalled the device having capabilities beyond simple transformations, a scan mode, communication features, even DNA repair functions. "Come on," he muttered, twisting the dial in a complex pattern his fingers somehow remembered. "There has to be more I can access." To his surprise, a holographic display suddenly projected from the watch face, not the message he'd seen before, but a DNA catalog showing his 10 alien forms plus several locked silhouettes. "Master control remains locked," an automated voice stated flatly. "Universal transition protocols have degraded transformation matrix stability. Recommend caution with extended transformations until full system recalibration." Benjiro stared at the projection, heart racing. It was the first concrete confirmation that the device recognized it had crossed between universes. More importantly, it warned of instability with extended transformations, perhaps explaining his difficulties controlling Ghost Freak. The hologram flickered out as quickly as it had appeared, leaving Benjiro with more questions than answers. But one thing was certain, he would need to be careful with his transformations during the sports festival tomorrow. Morning arrived with a buzz of excitement throughout UA. The sports festival was Japan's most watched sporting event, surpassing even the Olympics in viewership. For Hero Course students, it represented their best opportunity to catch the attention of pro agencies for future internships. Class 1A gathered in their waiting room, a mix of nervous energy and determined focus filling the space. Todoroki's dramatic declaration of war against Midoriya added to the tension, though Benjiro found himself more concerned with managing his transformations than class rivalries. "Nervous?" Momo asked, appearing beside him as they prepared to enter the stadium. A little, Benjiro admitted. You. Terrified, she confessed with a small smile. But determined not to show it. You'll be amazing, he said sincerely. Your quirk is perfect for this kind of challenge, versatile, powerful, and strategic. A pleased blush touched Momo's cheeks. Thank you. I've been analyzing the previous year's events and preparing creation templates for the most likely scenarios. Of course you have, Benjiro laughed softly. The methodical way she approached everything was becoming endearingly familiar. As they entered the stadium to thunderous applause, Benjiro scanned the crowd reflexively. Somewhere out there, his mother would be watching, probably wearing the Tenjo 1 shirt she'd embarrassingly insisted on making. But his eyes were also searching for something else, any sign of the mysterious figure with the purple device. Midnight's announcement of the first event, an obstacle race, sent a ripple of determination through the students. Benjiro positioned himself near the starting line, the Omnitrix ready. Begin. Midnight's voice echoed through the stadium, and chaos erupted as students charged toward the narrow exit tunnel. Benjiro immediately transformed into XLR-8, his streamlined body easily weaving through the crowd. He burst from the tunnel ahead of most competitors, only to find Todoroki creating an enormous ice wall behind him, trapping the others. Racing ahead, Benjiro encountered the first major obstacle, massive robots like those from the entrance exam. While Todoroki froze his way through and Midoriya cleverly used scrap metal for leverage, Benjiro transformed into Cannonbolt, rolling through the mechanical opponents with destructive force. The second obstacle, a tightrope canyon crossing, required precision Cannonbolt lacked. Switching to Stinkfly, Benjiro flew across easily, passing several students struggling with the ropes. That's cheating. Mineta called as Benjiro zoomed overhead. It's called adapting. Benjiro shouted back with a grin. The final obstacle, a minefield, forced him to slow down. While Stinkfly could fly over it, the form's bulky shape made it an easy target for Bakugo, who had caught up and was using explosions to propel himself forward. Making a split-second decision, Benjiro transformed again, this time into a small, cricket-like alien named Ball Weevil, whose lightweight body could hop across the mines without triggering them. The transformation surprised even him. Ball Weevil wasn't one of the forms he commonly used. The alien's unique ability to create explosive slime balls gave him an idea. Gathering mine residue as he hopped, Ball Weevil formed a massive adhesive sphere, then rode it like a ball, gaining momentum. The impromptu strategy worked brilliantly until Midoriya's spectacular mine explosion catapulted him into the lead. Benjiro, Todoroki, and Bakugo all accelerated in response, creating a four-way race back into the stadium. Benjiro finished fourth, just behind Bakugo, having switched back to XLR-8 for the final sprint. As the dust settled and other competitors arrived, he caught Momo's approving nod from where she'd finished, respectably in the top 10 despite the disadvantage her creation quirk faced in pure speed events. The second event, a cavalry battle, required team formation. Benjiro found himself approached by several classmates, all interested in his versatile transformations. Before he could decide, Momo touched his arm. "Would you consider joining our team?" she asked. "Todoroki has already recruited me and is looking for versatile quirks." The opportunity to work directly with Momo was tempting, but Benjiro hesitated. "Why would Todoroki want me? He doesn't seem like the friendly type." "He's being strategic," Momo explained. "Your transformations offer counters to multiple threats, especially Bakugo's explosions." Todoroki's team ultimately consisted of himself, Momo, Ida, and Kaminari, a powerhouse of offense, defense, and mobility. Benjiro instead joined with Uraraka, Midoriya, and surprisingly, Tokoyami, forming a team around Midoriya's valuable 10 million point headband. "Your ghost form could be invaluable for defense," Midoriya explained, already strategizing. "And if necessary, your fire form could counter Todoroki's ice." Benjiro tensed. "I'd prefer not to use Ghost Freak unless absolutely necessary. That form is unpredictable." "Understood," Midoriya nodded, ever adaptable. What about your crystalline form for defense instead? As the cavalry battle began, Benjiro transformed into Diamond Head, his crystalline body serving as their team's front rider while Midoriya balanced on top. Uraraka's gravity manipulation made them lighter, while Tokoyami's dark shadow provided additional mobility and defense. The battle quickly devolved into chaos, with multiple teams targeting Midoriya's millions. Todoroki's team proved particularly formidable, Momo creating insulated blankets to counter Kaminari's electricity, while Todoroki froze opponents in place. When Todoroki's team cornered them against the boundary, Benjiro made a risky call. Midoriya, I need to switch forms. With a flash of green light, Diamond Head became Upgrade, the technological alien that could merge with and enhance machinery. Benjiro spread his liquid metal body over Uraraka's boots, upgrading them into rocket-powered hover shoes that allowed their team to escape the ice trap. Incredible adaptation. Present Mix voice boomed over the stadium. Class 1A's Tenjo continues to surprise with his transformation arsenal. The cavalry battle's intensity increased as time ran short. In a desperate final play, Todoroki's team executed a perfect combination attack, Kaminari's electricity, channeled through Momo's conductive rod, while Ida's recipro burst propelled them forward with unstoppable momentum. Despite their best efforts, Midoriya's team lost the headband in the final seconds. They managed to snag another team's points, barely qualifying for the final tournament round. As they caught their breath after the intense battle, Benjiro found himself facing Momo across the field. She gave him a respectful nod, acknowledging their competition while maintaining their growing friendship. The tournament bracket placed Benjiro against Shiozaki Ibra from Class 1B in the first round. As he prepared in the waiting room, Midoriya approached with characteristic enthusiasm. Tenjo-kun, your upgrade form was amazing. I've been thinking about the applications. Can you merge with any technology, or are there limitations? Benjiro smiled at his classmate's endless curiosity. Most tech works, though more complex systems are harder to control. And I can't stay merged for too long without risking the integrity of both myself and the technology. Fascinating. Midoriya scribbled frantically in his notebook. Is that true for all your forms? Do they each have time limitations? The question struck closer to Benjiro's concerns than Midoriya could know. Yeah, some more than others. My quirk needs recharge time between extensive use. Before Midoriya could ask more questions, they were interrupted by an announcement calling Benjiro to the arena for his match. Standing across from Shiozaki, Benjiro assessed his opponent carefully. Her vine hair quirk was powerful and versatile, capable of both offense and defense. He'd need a form that could counter plant-based attacks. As soon as midnight began the match, Shiozaki launched a barrage of vines toward him. Benjiro transformed into Heat Blast, his body erupting in flames as he sent controlled fire blasts to burn away the approaching vines. A fire transformation. Present Mike announced. Tenjo counters Shiozaki's vines with burning efficiency. Shiozaki wasn't easily defeated, however. She quickly adapted, sending vines from multiple directions to surround Benjiro while staying out of his direct line of fire. As the vines closed in, Benjiro switched forms again, becoming Wildmutt, a bestial alien with no eyes but enhanced senses that allowed him to navigate through the vine forest by scent and sound. The animalistic form surprised the audience as Benjiro bounded through the vines on all fours, using powerful jaws and claws to tear through Shiozaki's defenses. With a final lunge, he pinned her outside the boundary, securing his victory. Transforming back, Benjiro helped Shiozaki to her feet. Great match, he said sincerely. Your quirk is impressive. As is yours, she replied graciously. Though I admit I wasn't prepared for such diversity in your transformations. As Benjiro left the arena, he caught sight of Momo preparing for her match against Tokoyami. On impulse, he stopped by the entrance tunnel. Hey, he called, drawing her attention. You've got this. Remember what we discussed about light sources affecting dark shadow. Momo's eyes widened slightly in recognition, then she nodded gratefully. Thank you, Tenjo-kun. Despite Benjiro's encouragement and her strategic preparation, Momo's match against Tokoyami ended in defeat. Dark Shadow's speed overwhelmed her before she could complete her light-based countermeasure. When she returned to the stands, her disappointment was palpable despite her composed expression. I overthought it, she said quietly when Benjiro sat beside her. By the time I decided what to create, it was too late. That happens sometimes, he replied, thinking of his own battles where transformation indecision had cost him dearly. But you'll learn from it. You don't need to console me, she said, though her tone was appreciative rather than dismissive. I understand my weaknesses now. Hesitation in combat is fatal. The tournament continued with increasingly spectacular matches. Benjiro defeated Kaminari in the second round, using Buzzshock, a lightning-based alien that could absorb electrical attacks. The transformation was another surprise addition to his arsenal, one he hadn't used before, suggesting the Omnitrix was adapting to this world's challenges. His semi-final match against Tokoyami proved more challenging. Dark Shadow's versatility and Tokoyami's strategic mind made for a formidable combination. Benjiro cycled through several transformations, Heat Blast to create light that weakened Dark Shadow, Ghost Freak to avoid direct attacks, and finally Feedback to absorb ambient energy from the stadium lights and redirect it in a blinding flash that overwhelmed Dark Shadow's weakness to light. The victory earned him a place in the finals against Todoroki, who had defeated Midoriya in a match that revealed far more about both of their quirks than either had likely intended. As Benjiro prepared for the final match, exhaustion weighed heavily on him. The Omnitrix had been in near constant use throughout the day, and the warning about transformation instability nagged at him. He'd already used 8 different forms, more variety than he'd ever attempted in a single day. You should be proud, Momo said, finding him in the preparation room. Making it to the finals is an outstanding achievement. Thanks, Benjiro smiled tiredly. Though Todoroki won't be easy to beat, especially after what happened with Midoriya. Momo's expression grew serious. Yes, he's finally using his fire side. It makes him significantly more dangerous. She hesitated, then added, be careful, Tenjo-kun. You've been transforming frequently today. Even for a quirk as versatile as yours, there must be limits. Her perceptiveness shouldn't have surprised him by now. There are, he admitted. The Omni, my quirk needs recovery time. I've been pushing it pretty hard. Then perhaps a strategic loss wouldn't be dishonorable, she suggested practically. You've already impressed the pro heroes with your performance. Benjiro shook his head. That's not really my style. Ben Tennyson never backed down from a challenge. The name slipped out before he could stop it. Momo's eyebrows rose slightly. Ben Tennyson. Before Benjiro could explain or deflect, the call came for him to enter the arena for the final match. The roar of the crowd was deafening as Benjiro and Todoroki took their positions. Across the concrete platform, Todoroki's expression was focused, resolved. Whatever internal conflict had plagued him during his match with Midoriya seemed settled. Both fire and ice now swirled around his body in controlled harmony. Begin. Midnight's announcement barely finished before Todoroki launched a massive ice attack, larger than any he'd used previously. Benjiro transformed into Heat Blast, countering the ice with waves of flame. The collision of elements created a steamy mist that momentarily obscured the arena. Through the haze, Todoroki charged forward, his right side generating ice projectiles while his left hand prepared a fire attack. Realizing Heat Blast's flames would be matched by Todoroki's own fire, Benjiro switched to NRG, a radioactive alien contained in a protective suit. The form's energy absorption capabilities allowed him to draw in Todoroki's flames while the armored exterior resisted ice attacks. The battle escalated as both competitors pushed their powers to new limits. Todoroki created increasingly complex ice structures, forcing Benjiro to constantly adapt. Each transformation drained the Omnitrix further, the recharge periods between shifts growing longer. After countering a particularly massive fire-ice combination attack, Benjiro felt the Omnitrix pulse warning signals against his wrist. The device was reaching critical depletion, 1, maybe 2 more transformations before it needed significant recovery time. "You're slowing down," Todoroki observed during a brief lull, both competitors catching their breath. "Running out of energy?" Benjiro nodded honestly. "One more good transformation left. Better make it count." Todoroki's expression showed genuine respect. "Then let's finish this properly." With a roar, Todoroki unleashed his ultimate attack, a perfect fusion of fire and ice creating a swirling vortex of elemental power that surged toward Benjiro like an unstoppable natural disaster. In response, Benjiro slammed down on the Omnitrix one final time, transforming into a form he'd been saving, Automix, one of his most powerful aliens. The nuclear-powered humanoid generated a blinding aura of green energy as Benjiro channeled everything the Omnitrix had left. HMNA HMNA HMNA. The strange chant escaped Benjiro's lips instinctively as Automix gathered energy between his hands. Nuclear winner. The resulting energy blast collided with Todoroki's elemental vortex in a spectacular explosion that shook the entire stadium. For a moment, both attacks held in perfect equilibrium, neither competitor yielding. Then, with an electronic whine, the Omnitrix reached its limit. Green light engulfed Benjiro as he involuntarily reverted to human form, leaving him defenseless against the remains of Todoroki's attack. The ice-fire combination knocked him clear out of the ring, ending the match. Todoroki advances by ring out. Midnight announced as the crowd erupted in cheers for the spectacular finale. Benjiro lay on his back outside the ring, exhausted but oddly satisfied. He'd pushed himself and the Omnitrix to their limits, showcasing abilities that would definitely attract attention from hero agencies. A shadow fell across him as Todoroki offered a hand. "That was an impressive fight," he said as he helped Benjiro to his feet. "Your final form. I've never felt power like that before." "Right back at you," Benjiro replied, genuine respect in his voice. That fire-ice combination was something else. As they left the arena to thunderous applause, Benjiro felt a strange prickling sensation at the back of his neck, the feeling of being watched. Scanning the crowd, his eyes locked onto a hooded figure in the upper stands. Though too distant to make out clearly, something about their posture sent a chill down his spine. The figure raised their wrist slightly, a purple glow briefly visible before they turned and disappeared into the exit tunnel. The award ceremony passed in a blur, Benjiro accepting his second-place medal from All Might with a distracted smile, his mind fixed on the mysterious figure. Had they come to observe him? To confirm his identity? The purple glow reminded him of his dreams, of villains who had coveted the Omnitrix's power. Tenjo-kun, Momo's voice pulled him back to the present as students dispersed after the ceremony. "That was an extraordinary performance." "Thanks," he replied, falling into step beside her as they headed back to the changing rooms. "I wish I could have held that last transformation a bit longer." "The form you called Automix?" she asked. "It was impressive, and quite different from your others." Benjiro nodded, too tired to be surprised that she'd caught the name. "It's one of my most powerful, but also the most energy-intensive." They walked in comfortable silence for a moment before Momo spoke again. "Earlier, before the final match, you mentioned a name, Ben Tennyson." Benjiro's stride faltered slightly. "Did I?" "Yes." Her dark eyes studied him with gentle curiosity. "You said, Ben Tennyson never backed down from a challenge, as if referring to someone else. Yet you spoke with personal conviction." The exhaustion from the tournament battles, combined with the emotional toll of keeping his secrets, weakened Benjiro's resolve. Maybe it was time to trust someone with the full truth, and Momo, with her analytical mind and proven loyalty, seemed the ideal confidant. "I think we should have that private conversation we talked about," he said quietly. "After we've recovered from today. There's a lot more to my story than I've told anyone." Momo's expression softened with understanding. "I'd like that. Perhaps this weekend?" My family has a private garden that's quite secluded. The invitation to her home surprised him, but Benjiro nodded gratefully. That sounds perfect. The following days brought a welcome respite as classes were suspended to allow students to recover from the festival. The Omnitrix remained in recharge mode longer than usual, its display a solid red rather than its typical green. Benjiro took the opportunity to catch up on sleep, hoping for more revelatory dreams that might help him piece together his fragmented memories. On Saturday morning, he stood before the imposing gates of the Yayorozu estate, suddenly nervous about both the impending revelations and the casual reminder of Momo's wealthy background. The sprawling mansion and manicured grounds made his modest apartment seem minuscule by comparison. A butler escorted him through the house, all high ceilings and priceless artwork, to the garden where Momo waited. She sat beneath a cherry tree in full bloom, a tea set arranged on a small table beside her. Dressed in casual clothes rather than her school uniform, she somehow looked both more approachable and more elegant. "Welcome, Tenjo-kun," she greeted, gesturing to the seat across from her. "I hope the directions weren't too complicated." "Not at all," he replied, taking the offered seat. "Your home is impressive." A faint blush touched her cheeks. "It's rather excessive, I know. My parents value traditional aesthetics." "It's beautiful," he assured her. "Thanks for inviting me." Momo poured tea with practiced grace, the familiar ritual seeming to calm her slightly. "I should admit I've been researching since the sports festival," she said, handing him a cup. "About transformation quirks, energy-based anomalies, and interdimensional theory." Benjiro nearly choked on his tea. Interdimensional theory? A speculative field, certainly, she acknowledged with a small smile, but not entirely without scientific basis. Certain quirks suggest the possibility of spatial manipulation beyond our conventional understanding. "Momo," Benjiro set down his cup, deciding to dispense with formalities. "What exactly do you think is going on with me?" She met his eyes directly. "I think your quirk is actually advanced technology, possibly of extraterrestrial origin. I think the name, Ben Tennyson, holds personal significance to you beyond simple admiration. And I think you've been experiencing memory fragments or knowledge that doesn't align with Benjiro Tenjo's life experiences." The accuracy of her assessment left him momentarily speechless. "That's pretty much exactly right. I'm a good observer," she said simply. Benjiro took a deep breath, then extended his wrist, displaying the Omnitrix. "This is called the Omnitrix. In another universe, another reality, it was created by a Galvan named Asmith, the smartest being in 5 galaxies. It contains the DNA of thousands of alien species and allows the wearer to transform into them." Rather than skepticism, Momo's expression showed fascination. "And you received this device in that other universe?" "Not just received it," Benjiro corrected, the weight of his dual existence heavy in his voice. "I was him, Ben Tennyson, a human who found the Omnitrix when he was 10 years old and became a hero who saved his universe multiple times." He explained everything, the fragmented memories, the dreams, the holographic message confirming his consciousness had somehow transferred between universes with the Omnitrix as the conduit. As he spoke, the story poured out of him like a dam breaking, pieces falling into place even as he articulated them. "So your consciousness, your memories from that life, are gradually integrating with your existence here," Momo summarized thoughtfully. "That explains the names you call out during transformations, the instinctive knowledge you sometimes display. And why I sometimes feel like 2 different people," Benjiro added. "Ben Tennyson was a hero, sometimes arrogant, often reckless, but ultimately good. Benjiro Tenjo was just a normal kid until the Omnitrix appeared on his wrist 5 years ago." "Fascinating," Momo murmured. "A quantum consciousness transfer facilitated by advanced technology. The scientific implications are extraordinary." Benjiro laughed despite himself. "That's your takeaway? Not that I'm basically a reincarnated hero from another universe?" Her lips curved in a smile. The human mind has always been theorized to exist somewhat independently from purely physical constraints. Some quirk researchers suggest consciousness itself may transcend conventional physical limitations. "You're taking this remarkably well," Benjiro observed, relief flooding through him at her acceptance. "I admit it's rather unprecedented," she acknowledged, "but not inherently less plausible than many quirk manifestations. Besides," her expression softened, "it explains the dichotomy I've observed in you, the experienced hero's instincts alongside moments of teenage uncertainty." They talked for hours, Benjiro sharing stories from his fragmented memories of Ben's adventures while Momo asked insightful questions that sometimes helped him connect previously disjointed recollections. As the afternoon light began to fade, they moved from the garden to a comfortable sitting room, continuing their conversation over dinner that a discreet staff member delivered without interruption. "There's something else," Benjiro said finally, setting down his fork. "At the sports festival, I saw someone in the crowd, someone with a device that glowed purple, similar to the Omnitrix. I think they recognized me, or at least recognized my transformations." Momo's expression grew serious. "Could it be someone else from your universe? Another consciousness transfer?" "Maybe," Benjiro frowned. "But the purple glow, in my memories, there was a device called the Nematrix, created as a predatory counterpart to the Omnitrix. And other enemies created knockoff versions with similar functions but different energy signatures. So this could potentially be an adversary who somehow followed you between universes," Momo concluded, her analytical mind immediately grasping the implications. "That would explain the timing, appearing only after you publicly displayed your abilities at UA. Which means I could be putting everyone around me in danger," Benjiro said grimly. "If they're anything like the villains from my memories, they won't hesitate to target people I care about." Momo reached across the table, her hand covering his in a gesture of support that sent an unexpected warmth through him. "UA students are no strangers to danger, as the USJ incident proved. Besides, forewarned is forearmed, now we can prepare." "We?" Benjiro raised an eyebrow. "Of course," she replied as if it were obvious. "You've shared your secret with me, and I intend to help you understand both the scientific aspects of your situation and the potential threats you face." Her matter-of-fact acceptance of his bizarre circumstances touched something deep within Benjiro. In his fragmented memories of Ben's life, he recalled the importance of having trusted allies, his cousin Gwen, his friend Kevin, his grandfather Max, people who understood his burden and stood beside him despite the dangers. "Thank you," he said simply, turning his hand to squeeze hers gently. A faint blush colored Momo's cheeks as she withdrew her hand, though her expression remained composed. "We should develop a protocol for identifying this mysterious figure. If they attended the sports festival, they likely have some means of blending into society here." Their planning session continued until evening, the easy collaboration reminding Benjiro of strategy meetings from his past life. By the time he prepared to leave, they had established a coded communication system and preliminary response plans for various encounter scenarios. At the front gate, Momo hesitated before saying, "Tenjo-kun, Benjiro, I want you to know that I find your situation extraordinary, but it doesn't change how I see you as a person. Whether you're Ben Tennyson, Benjiro Tenjo, or some unique integration of both, you remain someone I'm proud to call my friend." The sincerity in her voice made his heart skip a beat. "That means a lot," he replied, suddenly aware of how close they were standing. "And please, just call me Ben when we're alone. It feels right somehow." "Ben," she repeated with a small smile. "It suits you." The following week brought internship offers based on sports festival performance. Benjiro received several, including one from the Space Hero 13 that particularly interested him given his extraterrestrial transformations. To his surprise, Momo had also received an offer from 13 despite her early tournament elimination. "I may have mentioned your name when they contacted me," she admitted when they compared offers during lunch. "I thought working together during internships would give us more opportunity to study the Omnitrix's capabilities." Benjiro grinned. "Sneaky. I like it. Their shared internship with 13 proved invaluable. The Space Heroes facility included advanced laboratories that allowed Momo to analyze the Omnitrix's energy signature while Benjiro practiced maintaining transformations for extended periods. 13, though not privy to the full truth, provided insights about space-time physics that helped them better understand the theoretical framework of interdimensional travel. The energy pattern is unlike anything in our scientific literature, Momo observed one evening, reviewing data from their latest analysis session. It appears to fold dimensional space within itself, creating a pocket universe where the genetic material is stored. That sounds about right, Benjiro nodded, memories of Asmatha's explanations surfacing. The transformation process temporarily overwrites my DNA with the alien sample, while storing my human DNA in that pocket dimension. Their research was interrupted by an alert from 13, a villain attack at a nearby shopping center involving hostages. As they rushed to the scene with their mentor, Benjiro felt the familiar surge of adrenaline that had accompanied countless hero moments in his past life. The situation was tense. 3 villains with mutation-type quirks had barricaded themselves in a department store with dozens of civilians. Police had established a perimeter but were hesitant to move in due to the hostage risk. "We'll need to approach this carefully," 13 instructed. "Yayorozu, prepare non-lethal restraints. Tenjo, which of your forms would be best for covert entry?" Benjiro considered his options. Ghost Freak could phase through walls undetected, but he hesitated, remembering the form's control issues. "But you've mentioned concerns about maintaining control with that transformation," Momo finished, their recent practice sessions having revealed the extent of Ghost Freak's problematic consciousness. "What about Big Chill? The intangibility without the control issues." 13 looked between them, clearly noting their unusual synchronicity but focusing on the immediate crisis. "Whatever form you choose, priority is hostage safety. Yayorozu and I will create a diversion at the main entrance while you extract civilians from the rear." The plan proceeded smoothly at first. Benjiro transformed into Big Chill, a moth-like alien with ice powers and intangibility, and phased through the building's walls unseen. Inside, he located the hostages being guarded by 2 of the villains while the third monitored police movements from the front windows. Using Big Chill's ice breath, Benjiro quietly immobilized one guard before they could raise an alarm. The second noticed something amiss but found themselves frozen from the legs up before they could react. "It's okay," Benjiro assured the frightened hostages, his voice carrying Big Chill's whispery quality. "I'm a hero in turn with 13. We're going to get you out safely." As he guided the civilians toward the rear exit, a familiar tingling sensation at the back of his neck made him pause. Someone was watching him, not the remaining villain, but something else. Scanning the store's shadowy upper level, he caught a glimpse of movement near the ceiling rafters. "Yayorozu," he whispered into the communicator 13 had provided, "possible 4th hostile inside, upper level. Proceeding with evacuation but stay alert." "Understood," came Momo's calm reply. 13 is engaging the villain at the entrance. I'll maintain position to receive hostages." The evacuation continued efficiently, Benjiro ushering small groups through the back exit where Momo waited with blankets and first aid supplies for those who needed them. As the final civilians cleared the building, Benjiro prepared to assist 13 with the remaining villain. A slow clapping sound echoed through the now empty store. "Very heroic, Tennyson. Always saving the day, aren't you?" Benjiro whirled to face the voice, ice forming instinctively around Big Chill's hands. A figure stepped from the shadows, a woman in her 20s with striking purple hair and eyes that seemed to glow in the dimness. On her wrist was a device unmistakably similar to the Omnitrix, but purple rather than green. "Who are you?" Benjiro demanded, though something in her familiar tone sent warning signals through his fragmented memories. "You don't remember me?" "I'm hurt." The woman's smile was predatory. "Though I suppose interdimensional consciousness transfer might fragment certain memories. Let me refresh you, my name is Elena Albright. In your universe, you knew me briefly as Dr. Onimo's assistant. The name triggered a flash of memory, a laboratory, a seemingly shy assistant who had helped an old enemy of Ben's before revealing her own agenda. But the details remained frustratingly vague. What do you want? Benjiro maintained his defensive stance, aware that Momo would have heard this exchange through the communicator. Elena held up her wrist, displaying the purple device. The Xenomatrix. My own little souvenir from crossing between worlds. Not as versatile as your Omnitrix, but it has its advantages, namely that it doesn't have all those pesky moral restrictions Azimuth built into yours. How did you get here? How did you find me? Benjiro demanded, ice crystals forming in the air around him as Big Chill's temperature dropped further. The same way you did, more or less, she shrugged. When Dr. Onimo's dimensional transporter malfunctioned during our little confrontation, it created a quantum entanglement between our devices. Where the Omnitrix went, the Xenomatrix followed. Though I admit, waking up in this bizarre superhuman society was quite an adjustment. Before Benjiro could respond, the wall behind him exploded inward as a massive creature burst through, not one of the local villains, but something alien and monstrous. It resembled a grotesque fusion of rhinoceros and gorilla, with 6 eyes and armored plates covering its purple-hued skin. Meet Brutalian, Elena smirked as the creature roared. Just one of my collection. Unlike your Omnitrix, the Xenomatrix specializes in hybridized DNA samples, more unstable, but significantly more aggressive. Benjiro dodged as the creature charged, its massive fists cratering the floor where he had stood. The close quarters disadvantaged Big Chill's flight capabilities, forcing him to phase through walls and debris to avoid the rampaging hybrid alien. Ben. Momo's voice came through his communicator. I'm coming in. Stay back, he warned, barely avoiding Brutalian's grasp. This isn't a normal villain. Too late, Momo had already entered through the rear door, a metal staff created from her quirk held defensively. Her eyes widened at the sight of the monstrous alien, but she didn't falter. So this is your little girlfriend, Elena observed with cruel amusement. How sweet. Brutalian, new target. The creature's 6 eyes swiveled toward Momo, who braced herself with the staff. Benjiro felt a surge of protective fury as Brutalian charged toward her. "No!" he shouted, transforming mid-flight from Big Chill to Heat Blast, his fiery form intercepting the creature with a massive thermal blast that sent it crashing into a support column. Momo didn't waste the opportunity, quickly creating flash grenades that she threw with precision, momentarily blinding both Brutalian and Elena. The structural integrity is compromised, she called to Benjiro. We need to move this outside before the building collapses. On it. Benjiro transformed again, this time into a new alien, one he somehow knew was called Crashhopper. The insectoid form had powerful legs that allowed him to tackle Brutalian with tremendous force, propelling them both through the already damaged wall and into the parking lot. Outside, 13 was securing the original villains when Benjiro and Brutalian crashed into the open space. The space hero reacted immediately, using their black hole quirk to help contain debris from the damaged building. What is that creature? 13 called, clearly recognizing it wasn't one of the reported villains. Before Benjiro could answer, Elena leapt through the hole in the wall, the Xenomatrix glowing as she transformed into her own alien form, a lithe, serpentine being with 4 arms and scaled skin that reflected light in disorienting patterns. 2 against 1 seems unfair, she hissed, her transformed voice carrying a hypnotic quality. Let me even the odds. She pressed the purple device again, and a second hybrid alien materialized beside her, this one resembling a cross between a mantis and a wolf, with serrated limbs and a fanged maw that dripped corrosive saliva. Tenjo, Yaoyorozu, fall back. 13 ordered, moving to engage the new threats. No. Benjiro transformed again, this time into Diamond Head. 13, evacuate the area. These aren't normal villains, they're extraterrestrial hybrids. The battle that followed was unlike anything the local heroes had faced before. Elena's hybrid aliens possessed powers and abilities foreign to this world's understanding of quirks. Brutalion's strength rivaled All Might's, while the Mantis-Wolf hybrid moved with impossible speed and precision. Momo proved her worth repeatedly, creating countermeasures based on observations of the aliens' behaviors, reflective shields that disoriented Elena's hypnotic light patterns, chemical compounds that neutralized the Mantis-Wolf's corrosive saliva. Their hybrid nature creates structural weaknesses, she called to Benjiro after a particularly close analysis. The DNA integration points aim for the joints where different species characteristics meet. Following her insight, Benjiro transformed into XLR-8 to gain speed advantage, then strategically struck the exact anatomical vulnerabilities Momo identified. The Mantis-Wolf hybrid collapsed first, its unstable DNA structure breaking down under targeted pressure. Brutally and proved more resilient, forcing Benjiro to transform once more, this time into Automix, despite the energy drain he'd experienced during the sports festival. The nuclear-powered alien form generated a controlled energy field that contained and neutralized Brutalion's rampage. Throughout the battle, Elena remained mostly on the defensive, observing more than engaging directly. When both her hybrid aliens were defeated, she reverted to human form with a calculating smile. "Not bad, Tennyson. You've adapted well to this world." Her eyes shifted to Momo. "And found yourself quite the intelligent partner." This was merely a greeting, a reminder that wherever you go, whatever you become, our rivalry continues. Before they could apprehend her, Elena activated something on her Xenomatrix that created a localized distortion field. "Until next time," she said, stepping backward into the purple-hued distortion and vanishing from sight. The aftermath brought expected complications, police reports that struggled to classify aliens as villains, news coverage speculating about unprecedented mutation quirks, and lengthy debriefings with 13. Through it all, Benjiro and Momo maintained the official story that the creatures were manifestations of the unknown villain's transformation quirk, similar to Benjiro's own. It was late evening by the time they finally had a moment alone in 13's facility, reviewing the day's events and implications. "She called you Tennyson," Momo noted quietly. "And new details about the Omnitrix's creator." Benjiro nodded grimly. "She's definitely from my universe. The Xenomatrix must be a knockoff version of the Omnitrix that somehow got quantum entangled with it during the dimensional transfer." Her hybrid aliens were formidable, Momo observed, reviewing notes she'd taken during the battle. "But unstable at the genetic level. The forced combination of different alien DNA creates inherent weaknesses." "Which you spotted immediately," Benjiro pointed out with admiration. "I wouldn't have targeted the integration points without your analysis." A pleased blush touched Momo's cheeks before her expression grew serious again. "She'll be back, won't she?" "Definitely," Benjiro confirmed, the weight of this new threat heavy on his shoulders. "And she'll be more prepared next time. In my fragmented memories, most of my enemies learn from each encounter, developing specific counters to my aliens." Momo's hand found his, her touch reassuring. "Then we'll be prepared as well. I've already started cataloging the observable properties of her hybrid aliens and potential countermeasures for each." The simple gesture of support, her hand in his, her unwavering confidence, stirred something in Benjiro that transcended both his identities. Whether as Ben Tennyson or Benjiro Tenjo, he'd never met anyone quite like Momo Yaoyorozu, brilliant, composed, and unfailingly loyal. "Thank you," he said quietly. "For believing me. For helping me. For everything." Her dark eyes met his, something unspoken passing between them. "That's what friends do," she replied softly, though the way her fingers tightened briefly around his suggested perhaps friendship wasn't all she felt. The remainder of their internship took on new urgency after Elena's appearance. With 13's help, though still without revealing the full interdimensional truth, they developed training simulations based on the hybrid aliens' capabilities. Momo created an extensive database of alien transformation properties, correlating Benjiro's forms with potential tactical applications and limitations. On their final evening before returning to UA, they sat together on the roof of 13's facility, watching the stars that suddenly held new meaning for both of them. Do you think your home universe is out there somewhere? Momo asked, her gaze on the constellation pattern so familiar yet so alien to Benjiro's fragmented memories. Another Earth with different heroes, different challenges? Maybe, Benjiro replied thoughtfully. Or maybe it exists in a completely different dimensional plane that just happens to have the same stars. The multiverse theory in my memory suggested infinite variations of reality existing simultaneously. It's humbling, Momo said softly. To think of countless worlds, countless possibilities. In some other universe, perhaps I'm the one with the Omnitrix, and you're creating objects from molecular understanding. The image made Benjiro laugh. I'd be terrible at your quirk. I can barely remember high school chemistry, let alone molecular structures. And I'd probably overthink every transformation decision, Momo admitted with a smile. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment before Benjiro found himself asking, do you ever wonder why? Why my consciousness crossed universes? Why I ended up specifically in this world, at this time? Momo considered the question with characteristic thoughtfulness. I believe significant events rarely happen without purpose, even if that purpose isn't immediately apparent. Perhaps this world needed what you could offer, your experience, your unique perspective as someone who's been a hero in multiple realities. Or maybe I needed what this world could offer me, Benjiro suggested quietly, glancing at her profile illuminated in the moonlight. Her eyes met his, understanding passing between them without words. For a moment, it seemed the distance between them might close, the growing feelings neither had openly acknowledged finally finding expression. The moment was interrupted by 13 calling them inside for a final briefing before tomorrow's return to UA. As they stood, Momo's hand brushed Benjiro's, perhaps accidentally, perhaps not. Whatever the reason, she said softly, I'm glad you're here, Ben. As they returned to UA the following day, Benjiro found his dual identity feeling less like a conflict and more like an integration. Ben Tennyson's memories provided experience and perspective, while Benjiro Tenjo's life in this world offered new relationships and possibilities. And somewhere in the merging of these identities, his feelings for Momo had taken root and blossomed. The threat of Elena and her Zenimatrix remained, a shadow at the edge of his thoughts. But for the first time since awakening in this universe, Benjiro felt truly at home, not because of where he was, but because of who stood beside him. As they rejoined their classmates, sharing edited versions of their internship experiences, Benjiro caught Momo's eye across the classroom. Her smile carried understanding of all that remained unspoken between them, secrets from other universes, dangers yet to face, and feelings that transcended worlds. Whatever came next, they would face it together. Chapter 3, Two Heroes. One destiny summer descended on Tokyo in waves of sticky heat that transformed UA's campus into a shimmering mirage of concrete and glass. For Benjiro, the weeks following their internship with 13 had been a strange mixture of normalcy and heightened vigilance. Every shadow potentially concealed Elena watching, every news report of strange incidents might herald her next move, and the Omnitrix remained in a constant state of readiness on his wrist. Yet life as a UA student continued. Training exercises, exams, and the daily rhythm of hero preparation marched forward with relentless momentum. Through it all, Momo remained his steady anchor, her analytical brilliance and unwavering support transforming what could have been a lonely vigil into a shared mission. Your stance is improving, Momo observed during a joint training session in UA's Gym Gamma. They had taken to practicing together several evenings a week, developing combat strategies that complemented both his transformations and her creation abilities. Benjiro, currently in human form, wiped sweat from his brow. Thanks. I've been working on maintaining better balance between forms. The muscle memory gets confusing sometimes. Understandable, given that each transformation has different physical proportions and center of gravity. She demonstrated a modified stance. This should provide a more adaptable foundation regardless of which form you take. These quiet moments together had become precious to Benjiro, opportunities to be fully himself without pretense. With Momo, he could freely discuss memories of alien worlds or technical aspects of the Omnitrix without fear of judgment or disbelief. And somewhere amid those conversations, training sessions, and shared secrets, his feelings for her had grown into something he could no longer ignore. Earth to Ben, Momo's voice pulled him from his thoughts. She'd taken to using his original name when they were alone, a small intimacy that never failed to warm him. You seem distracted. Sorry, he smiled apologetically. Just thinking about how much has changed since the sports festival. Indeed. Your control over your transformations has improved significantly. She created a water bottle from her palm and offered it to him. And your integration of both sets of memories appears more seamless now. Benjiro accepted the water gratefully. It feels less like two separate people competing for space in my head and more like different chapters of the same life. Momo nodded thoughtfully. A natural psychological adaptation. Your consciousness is finding equilibrium between your experiences as Ben Tennyson and your existence as Benjiro Tenjo. How do you make identity fusion sound so clinical? He laughed, though her assessment was remarkably accurate. A small smile touched her lips. I find scientific framing helps process extraordinary circumstances. It doesn't mean I find your situation any less remarkable. Their eyes met for a lingering moment, the unspoken feelings between them almost palpable in the quiet gym. Benjiro felt his heart quicken, wondering if now was finally the time to acknowledge what had been building between them for months. Before he could gather his courage, the gym door swung open as Kirishima and Ishido entered mid-conversation. Yamamoto. Tenjo. Ishido called cheerfully. Working late again? You two are so dedicated. Just some extra quirk practice, Momo replied smoothly, her composed demeanor returning instantly. We're actually heading to that new cafe near the station with some others, Kirishima offered. You should join us. All work and no play, you know. Benjiro glanced at Momo, who gave him a slight nod. Sounds good, he agreed. Give us 15 minutes to clean up. As they showered and changed in the locker rooms, Benjiro tried to shake off his disappointment at the interrupted moment. There would be other opportunities, he reasoned. Besides, maintaining normal friendship activities was important, especially with the final exams approaching and summer training camp looming beyond that. The cafe outing proved unexpectedly enjoyable, with several Class 1A students sharing stories and speculating about the upcoming exams. Seated beside Momo in a crowded booth, Benjiro found himself appreciating these moments of ordinary teenage life, experiences Ben Tennyson had often missed during his hero career. So are you two dating or what? Ishido asked bluntly during a lull in conversation, causing Benjiro to choke on his drink. Mina. Hagakure scolded, though her invisible form vibrated with obvious interest in the answer. Momo maintained her composure, though a faint blush colored her cheeks. Tenjo-kun and I are study partners and friends, she replied diplomatically. With how much time you spend together, we just assumed. Kaminari trailed off with a suggestive grin. We have compatible training methods, Benjiro explained, painfully aware of the warmth creeping up his neck. Yayorozu's analytical approach helps me refine my transformation strategies. Right, transformation strategies, Ishido giggled. Is that what they're calling it these days? The group's good-natured teasing continued, but Benjiro noticed Momo's thoughtful expression as they walked back to the train station later that evening. The others had gone ahead, leaving them briefly alone in the golden light of sunset. Does it bother you? He asked quietly. The assumptions they make about us? Momo considered the question with characteristic thoughtfulness. Not for the reason you might think. Their teasing is harmless, if somewhat immature. But something does bother you about it? She slowed her pace, choosing her words carefully. I suppose I'm concerned that our necessary secrecy about your true nature creates an impression of impropriety. As though we're hiding a mere teenage romance rather than matters of interdimensional significance. Benjiro couldn't help but smile at her formal phrasing of what was essentially, I don't want people thinking we're sneaking around for make-out sessions. Well, we are hiding something, he pointed out. Just not what they think. Precisely. She tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, a rare nervous gesture. Though I wonder sometimes if their assumption isn't entirely misplaced. The statement hung in the air between them, loaded with potential meaning. Benjiro's heart skipped a beat as he searched for the right response. A distant explosion shattered the moment, followed by screams and the wail of emergency sirens. They exchanged a quick glance, personal matters instantly shelved as hero instincts took over. "That's 3 blocks north," Benjiro said, already reaching for the Omnitrix. "Near the shopping district." "The others are ahead of us," Momo observed, creating a telescopic viewer from her arm to assess the situation. "They'll likely investigate as well." Benjiro transformed into XLR-8, his streamlined alien form built for speed. "Climb on," he instructed, crouching to allow Momo onto his back. "We'll get there faster together." She hesitated only briefly before wrapping her arms around his shoulders. "Ready." The world blurred around them as XLR-8's incredible speed carried them toward the disturbance. Within seconds, they arrived at a scene of chaos, a partially collapsed storefront, civilians fleeing in panic, and in the center of the destruction, a familiar purple-haired figure observing the mayhem with clinical interest. "Elena," Benjiro growled, setting Momo down carefully before positioning himself between her and their enemy. "Tennyson," Elena smiled coldly, the Zenimatrix gleaming on her wrist. "And your brilliant girlfriend too. How convenient." "What are you doing, Elena?" Benjiro demanded, watching her closely for any move toward her device. "These are innocent people." Testing a theory, she replied casually, gesturing to where a creature was emerging from the ruined building, a hybrid alien unlike any they'd seen before. It resembled a massive insectoid with translucent skin that shifted colors like a chameleon, 6 limbs ending in razor-sharp pincers. "Meet Phasmorph," Elena announced proudly. "A hybrid of Necrophrygian and chameleon DNA with some modifications of my own design. I've been curious about how this world's heroes would respond to a threat they cannot see or touch." The creature demonstrated its abilities immediately, shifting to near invisibility before phasing through a concrete wall. Its movement created a ripple in the air, barely perceptible except to the most observant eye. "We need to evacuate the remaining civilians," Momo said urgently, already creating emergency flares from her arms to guide people away from the danger zone. Benjiro nodded, transforming from XLR-8 to Big Chill, one of the alien DNA sources Elena had mentioned. "I'll track the Phasmorph. Its phasing ability will leave thermal traces I can detect." "How domestic," Elena mocked. "Already working as a team. I wonder how well that partnership will hold when tested." She pressed the Zenimatrix again, transforming into a hybrid form herself, a humanoid figure with 4 arms and skin like living metal. The arrival of their classmates complicated the battlefield. Kirishima, Ishido, Midoriya, and several others from Class 1A appeared at the scene, responding to the emergency like the heroes in training they were. "Tenjo! Yayorozu!" Midoriya called. "What's happening?" "Villain with a transformation quirk," Benjiro explained quickly, using the cover story they'd established. "She has an invisible accomplice who can phase through objects. Yayorozu is coordinating civilian evacuation, help her." The class split into teams with practiced efficiency, testament to their training. Ishido and Kirishima joined Momo in evacuation efforts while Midoriya and Todoroki moved to engage Elena. "Wait!" Benjiro warned. "She's stronger than she looks." His warning came too late as Elena demonstrated her hybrid form's capabilities, her metal skin absorbing Todoroki's ice attack before redirecting it through her 4 arms as concentrated force. Midoriya barely dodged, his enhanced reflexes saving him from the full impact. Meanwhile, the Phasmorph moved through the area like a ghost, striking civilians and heroes alike before disappearing through walls. Its chameleon-like camouflage made it nearly impossible to track visually, while its phasing ability rendered conventional attacks useless. Benjiro followed it as Big Chill, using his own intangibility to phase through obstacles. The thermal signature of another phasing entity appeared as a distinct distortion in his perception, a technique he developed during his original life as Ben. "I see you," he muttered, intercepting the phasmorph as it prepared to ambush a group of civilians Urarika was helping to evacuate. Big Chill's freezing breath manifested the creature momentarily, ice crystals forming on its translucent exoskeleton. The phasmorph screeched, a sound like metal tearing, before lashing out with surprising speed. Its pincers passed through Big Chill's intangible form harmlessly, but the attack revealed a disturbing ability. Even in its intangible state, the hybrid could interact with other intangible beings. "Guys, standard attacks won't work on this thing." Benjiro called to his classmates as he dodged another strike. "It can phase through matter." Momo, ever observant, was already analyzing the situation. "If it's similar to your Big Chill form, extreme temperature changes might force it to solidify momentarily." "On it!" Todoroki called, momentarily breaking away from the fight with Elena to send alternate waves of ice and fire toward the area where the phasmorph had last been spotted. The temperature fluctuations worked, the creature became partially visible as it struggled to maintain its phasing. Benjiro capitalized immediately, transforming into NRG, whose radioactive form could generate intense heat. "Everyone back," he warned before releasing a controlled radiation pulse that forced the phasmorph fully into the visible spectrum. "Now!" Momo directed, having created specialized adhesive projectiles that expanded on contact, ensnaring the creature as Midoriya and Ishido launched a coordinated attack that finally subdued it. Elena, observing the defeat of her hybrid creation, smiled with unsettling satisfaction. "Impressive teamwork. You've adapted well to this world's hero system, Tennyson." "It's over, Elena," Benjiro declared, transforming back to human form as pro-heroes began arriving at the scene. "Whatever you're planning stops now." "Oh, I'm just getting started," she replied cryptically. "This was merely a calibration test. The real experiment begins soon." She activated her Zenimatrix, creating the familiar purple distortion field. "I look forward to our next encounter. Perhaps next time your girlfriend won't be so fortunate." Before anyone could stop her, she stepped into the distortion and vanished, leaving behind her incapacitated hybrid creature and many unanswered questions. The aftermath brought expected complications, police reports, witness statements, and concerned faculty members from UA arriving to check on their students. Through it all, Benjiro kept Momo in his sight, Elena's parting threat echoing in his mind. When they finally had a moment alone, waiting for transport back to campus, he voiced his concern. "She threatened you specifically. I think she's recognized how important you are." To the tactical response against her hybrids, Momo reasoned, though her expression suggested she understood his deeper meaning. "Not just that." Benjiro's voice dropped lower. "To me, Momo. She's identified you as my weakness." The admission hung between them, laden with implications neither had fully voiced until now. Momo's eyes softened as she placed a hand lightly on his arm. "Then we'll use that assumption against her," she said with quiet determination. "Anticipate her targeting strategy and prepare accordingly." "I can't put you at risk," Benjiro insisted. "Maybe we should distance ourselves publicly, make it seem like we're not as close." "Absolutely not." Her tone left no room for argument. "First, it's tactically unsound to separate when we work most effectively as a team. Second, it's too late to convincingly pretend otherwise. And third." She hesitated, a rare uncertainty crossing her features. "I have no desire to distance myself from you, regardless of the risk." The simple honesty of her statement struck Benjiro speechless. In that moment, surrounded by the chaos of villain cleanup and flashing emergency lights, he wanted nothing more than to close the distance between them and express what words were failing to convey. The arrival of Aizawa interrupted the moment. Their homeroom teacher's bandaged face revealed nothing as he assessed them both with his perpetually tired eyes. "Tenjo. Yayorozu. Report." Their debriefing was clinical and efficient, maintaining the established cover story about Elena being a villain with a unique transformation quirk. Aizawa listened silently, his expression unreadable, before finally speaking. This is the second encounter with this particular villain targeting you, Tenjo. That suggests a personal vendetta. Benjiro nodded cautiously. It seems that way, sir. Her interest in your quirk is concerning. Aizawa's eyes narrowed slightly. Especially given its similarity to her own abilities. We've been analyzing potential countermeasures, Momo offered. Based on observed patterns in her transformations. Aizawa studied them both for a long moment before sighing. Whatever you're not telling me, and it's obvious there's something, I expect it won't endanger your classmates or civilians. It won't, sir, Benjiro promised, surprised by Aizawa's tacit acknowledgement of their secrecy without demanding full disclosure. See that it doesn't. Their teacher turned to leave before adding, the final exams begin next week. Focus on your studies. Leave villain pursuit to the pros. They both knew that wouldn't be possible, not with Elena's threat hanging over them, but they nodded in agreement nonetheless. The following days passed in a blur of exam preparation and heightened vigilance. Benjiro and Momo spent every available moment either studying together or refining their response strategies for Elena's potential return. The threat against Momo created a new urgency to their interactions, an unspoken acknowledgement that time might be limited. One evening, as they reviewed material in the common room of Heights Alliance, the new dormitory built after security concerns prompted UA to house students on campus, Benjiro found himself watching Momo as she concentrated on her notes. The graceful sweep of her ponytail, the furrow of concentration between her brows, the precise movement of her hands as she created a small molecular model to illustrate a complex concept, each detail had become precious to him. You're staring again, she observed without looking up, a small smile playing at her lips. Sorry, he replied, not sounding particularly apologetic. You're fascinating when you're thinking. A faint blush touched her cheeks as she finally met his eyes. We should focus on exam preparation. I know. He closed his textbook decisively. But I need to say something first, while we have a moment of quiet. Momo set down her pen, giving him her full attention. What is it? If something happens during the confrontation with Elena, if things go wrong, I need you to know. Benjiro took a deep breath, finding courage that had faced cosmic threats but still faltered before emotions. You've become the most important person in my life, Momo. In either life. Her eyes widened slightly, a vulnerability showing through her usual composure. Ben. You don't have to say anything, he continued quickly. I just needed to tell you, in case Elena makes her move and I don't get another chance. That's not acceptable, Momo said firmly, surprising him. Making declarations with contingencies attached. I'm just being realistic. No, you're being fatalistic, she interrupted, an unusual edge to her voice. If you have something important to say to me, say it properly, not as a precaution against possible failure. Her directness caught him off guard. This was a side of Momo he'd glimpsed only rarely, the absolute certainty beneath her analytical exterior, the uncompromising clarity that brooked no equivocation. Benjiro smiled slowly, recognizing the challenge in her eyes. You're right. I'm doing this wrong. He stood, moving around the table to where she sat. With deliberate care, he took her hand and pulled her gently to her feet. Momo Yaoyorozu, he said, holding her gaze steadily, I'm in love with you. Not because you've helped me understand this world, or because you accepted my impossible story, but because knowing you, in this life, in this world, has made me more complete than I've ever been before. In any universe. Her composure faltered, emotion washing across her features like sunrise breaking through clouds. For a terrifying moment, Benjiro thought he might have misread everything between them. Then Momo stepped forward, closing the distance between them with characteristic decisiveness. Her hand came up to rest against his cheek, her touch sending electricity through him more powerful than anything feedback could channel. Ben Tennyson, she said softly, interdimensional hero and impossible statistical anomaly, I love you too. The kiss that followed felt like coming home to a place he'd never been before, familiar and new simultaneously. Benjiro's arms wrapped around her waist as Momo's hands slid into his hair, the moment suspended in perfect balance between his two lives, his dual identities finding harmony in her embrace. When they finally separated, both slightly breathless, Benjiro rested his forehead against hers. I should have done that a long time ago. Your timing has always been questionable, Momo replied with a small smile. But adequate in the end. A light cough from the doorway shattered the moment. They turned to find Todoroki standing there, his expression as impassive as ever. Aizawa is looking for both of you, he stated flatly. Something about additional security protocols. Benjiro reluctantly stepped back from Momo, though he kept hold of her hand. We'll be right there. As Todoroki departed, Momo squeezed Benjiro's hand gently. This changes nothing about our tactical approach to Elena, she said, ever practical even in romantic moments. Wouldn't dream of suggesting otherwise, he replied with a grin. Though it does give me even more reason to make sure we both survive whatever she's planning. The final exams arrived with relentless academic precision. The written portions proved challenging but manageable, particularly with Momo's thorough preparation assistance. The practical exam, however, presented an unexpected twist. Students paired against teachers in combat scenarios designed to test both quirk application and teamwork. Benjiro found himself paired with Kaminari against Principal Nizu, the hyper-intelligent mouse-bear-dog creature whose strategic mind made him a formidable opponent despite his small stature. Momo, meanwhile, was partnered with Todoroki against Aizawa, whose erasure quirk posed a particular challenge to their reliance on created items and elemental powers. Don't worry about me, Momo assured Benjiro before they separated for their respective tests. Focus on your own exam. Principal Nizu is notoriously unpredictable. I've faced hyper-intelligent beings before, Benjiro replied, though her concern warned him. Just be careful with Aizawa. His quirk won't affect my transformations, but your creations are vulnerable to his erasure. They shared a brief, private smile before joining their assigned partners. Their relationship remained discreet, not secret, exactly, but understated in public spaces. The focus needed to remain on their hero training and the looming threat of Elena. Benjiro's exam against Principal Nizu proved every bit as challenging as Momo had warned. The diminutive principal used the urban testing ground as an elaborate trap, manipulating infrastructure to separate Benjiro from Kaminari before triggering cascading obstacles that required split-second transformation decisions. Your adaptability is impressive, Tenjo-kun, Nizu commented through the testing ground speakers as Benjiro transformed into Ripjaws to navigate a suddenly flooded section. But are you thinking far enough ahead? The question prompted Benjiro to pause, analyzing the principal's strategy rather than simply reacting to each challenge. Drawing on both Ben's experience with calculating opponents and Benjiro's UA training, he realized Nizu was herding them toward a central trap. Kaminari. He called through their communication devices after transforming back. He's directing us to the central plaza. We need to take an unexpected route. Working together, they managed to outflank Nizu's elaborate setup, with Benjiro using Brainstorm, a crustacean-like alien with electrokinesis and enhanced intelligence, to counter the principal's strategic thinking while complementing Kaminari's electrical quirk. They passed the exam with seconds to spare, Benjiro collapsing back to human form as exhaustion from multiple rapid transformations caught up with him. His thoughts immediately turned to Momo, wondering how she was faring against Aizawa. He needn't have worried. Upon returning to the monitoring room, they discovered that Momo and Todoroki had already completed their exam successfully. Momo had devised a strategy using Todoroki's ice to create reflective surfaces that blinded Aizawa momentarily, preventing him from maintaining his erasure quirk long enough for them to secure the victory. Their eyes met across the monitoring room, silent congratulations passing between them. The moment was interrupted by an alert on Benjiro's phone, a specialized notification system Momo had created to monitor news reports for any signs of Elena's activity. "What is it?" she asked, moving to his side immediately. "Unidentified creature sighting at Dagoba Municipal Beach Park," Benjiro read, tension coiling in his chest. "Witnesses describe it as, not human, moving through solid objects." Their eyes met in instant understanding. "Another hybrid," Momo concluded. "Likely a trap meant specifically for you." "Us," Benjiro corrected grimly. "Remember her parting threat." "We should inform the teachers," Todoroki suggested, overhearing their exchange. "We will," Benjiro assured him, "but we need to verify this first. It could be a false alarm." The excuse was thin, but it bought them enough time to slip away during the post-exam confusion. Using XLR-8 speed, Benjiro transported Momo to the beach park in minutes, arriving as sunset painted the horizon in shades of orange and crimson. The once polluted beach, famously cleaned by Midoriya before UA entrance exams, was now a popular recreation area. Currently, however, it stood eerily deserted, abandoned towels and personal belongings suggesting a hasty evacuation. "Too quiet," Benjiro observed, transforming back to human form as they surveyed the scene. "If there was a creature sighting, where are the police? The pro-heroes?" "A targeted communication," Momo concluded, creating a small detection device from her palm. "The alert was meant only for us." "Clever observation," Elena's voice called from behind them. "I've always appreciated intelligent adversaries. Makes victory so much more satisfying." They turned to find her standing atop a concrete seawall, the Zenimatrix glowing ominously on her wrist. Unlike their previous encounters, she wasn't alone. Beside her stood a man with wild white hair and a lab coat covered in strange stains, someone hauntingly familiar to Benjiro's fragmented memories. "Dr. Onimo," he gasped, the name surfacing from Ben's past. "That's impossible." "Not impossible, merely improbable," the man cackled, adjusting goggles that magnified his eyes to disturbing proportions. "Quantum entanglement is such a fascinating phenomenon, especially when catalyzed by DNA recombination technology." Momo stepped closer to Benjiro, her voice low. "Another person from your universe?" "One of my recurring enemies," Benjiro confirmed quietly. "A mad scientist specializing in genetic manipulation and mutation. My brilliance transcends dimensional barriers," Onimo declared, apparently overhearing them. "When dear Elena found me in this quirk-infested world, I recognized the potential immediately. So many fascinating genetic variations to explore." "We've been busy during our absence," Elena added, her smile coldly predatory. "Testing the limits of this world's hybrid potential. The results have been evolutionary." She activated the Zenimatrix, but instead of transforming herself, the device projected a wide-spectrum pulse that rippled across the beach. The sand began to shift and bubble as though boiling, before erupting in a dozen different locations. From each eruption emerged a creature, not the alien hybrids they had faced before, but something new. These beings appeared to be fusions of local wildlife with quirk-manifested genetic material, creating chimeric abominations that defied biological classification. "Behold the future of this world," Onimo proclaimed with maniacal glee. "Where alien DNA and quirk factors combine to create perfect hybrid soldiers." "You're insane," Benjiro growled, activating the Omnitrix. "This ends now." "On the contrary," Elena replied coolly. "It's only beginning. Consider this your final exam, Tennyson. Let's see if you and your brilliant partner can survive what we've created." The hybrid creatures attacked in coordinated waves, displaying intelligence beyond natural animals. Benjiro transformed into Heat Blast, creating a protective ring of fire around himself and Momo as they assessed the threat. "They're exhibiting quirk-like abilities," Momo observed, creating a combat staff from her arm. "But with animal physiologies altered to maximize those abilities." Onimo's specialty, Benjiro confirmed, launching fireballs to keep the more aggressive creatures at bay. "He's done this before in my universe," mutated animals into monsters. But never with quirk factors involved. One creature, resembling a crab with explosive protrusions similar to Bakugo's quirk, detonated its claws near the fire barrier, creating a shock wave that disrupted Benjiro's flames. Another, snake-like entity with multiple eyes similar to Shoji's quirk, used its enhanced perception to coordinate attacks from multiple angles. Momo responded with tactical precision, creating specialized capture equipment for each creature type. A quick hardening foam neutralized the explosive crab, while flash grenades temporarily blinded the multi-eyed snake. Their coordination had improved dramatically since their first encounter with Elena, months of training and planning translating into fluid teamwork. Benjiro switched between transformations strategically, Wildvine to entangle multiple opponents, Water Hazard to neutralize electricity-generating hybrids, Armadillo to create fissures that trapped the less mobile creatures. Throughout the battle, Elena and Onimo observed from their elevated position, occasionally issuing commands to their creations or taking notes on combat performance. Their clinical detachment was perhaps more disturbing than active participation. This was clearly an experiment to them, with Benjiro and Momo as test subjects. "We need to reach them," Benjiro called to Momo after subduing another wave of hybrids. "The creatures are just a distraction." "Agreed." Momo created a grappling hook from her shoulder. "I can provide covering fire while you transform into something with flight capability to approach from above." Before they could implement the plan, Onimo raised a device that resembled a twisted hybrid of technology from both universes. Enough observation. Time to accelerate the experiment. The device emitted a sickly purple beam that struck the remaining hybrid creatures. Their bodies contorted grotesquely as they began to merge into a single, massive entity, a chimeric abomination with aspects of every component creature combined into a towering form that roared with multiple mouths. "Perfect." Onimo cackled. "The amalgam lives." The fused creature, easily 20 feet tall, focused compound eyes on Benjiro and Momo. With disturbing intelligence, it assessed them before attacking with combination abilities, explosive projectiles, elemental discharges, and enhanced physical strength all deployed in strategic sequence. "This is bad," Benjiro muttered, transforming into Diamond Head to block a barrage of explosive spines. "That thing has all their abilities combined." Momo created a shield to deflect acid spray, her analytical mind working furiously. "Its fusion is unstable, look at the junction points between different creature physiologies. If we can target those weaknesses." Their strategy shifted to precision strikes at the amalgam's integration points, where different genetic materials imperfectly merged. Benjiro transformed into feedback, absorbing energy attacks and redirecting them at these vulnerable junctions while Momo created catalytic compounds that destabilized the fusion process. The creature howled in multiple voices as its body began to break down, separation fissures appearing across its massive form. Onimo shouted in frustration, adjusting his device frantically to maintain the fusion. "Elena! Stabilize the Xenomatrix output," he demanded. "The integration is failing." "Perhaps we need a more personal approach," Elena replied coldly, activating her device. The purple light engulfed her as she transformed into a hybrid form, part humanoid, part crystalline structure similar to Diamond Head, but with disturbing organic components that pulsed beneath the surface. She leapt from the seawall, landing between Benjiro and the deteriorating amalgam. "Let me demonstrate how true hybrid potential is realized, Tennyson." With frightening speed, she drove crystalline spikes into the amalgam's body. The creature convulsed as purple energy from Elena's form flowed into it, stabilizing the fusion while simultaneously bringing it under her direct control. "Behold true power," she declared, her voice resonating in multiple tones as she partially merged with the amalgam. Complete integration of alien DNA, quirk factors, and conscious control. The newly stabilized hybrid creature moved with Elena's intelligence now, its attacks precisely targeted and significantly more dangerous. One massive limb swept toward Momo with deliberate force. "No!" Benjiro shouted, transforming into XLR-8 to intercept the attack. The impact sent him flying across the beach, crashing into abandoned lifeguard equipment. As I suspected, Elena observed through the amalgam's primary mouth, your attachment is your weakness. Benjiro struggled to his feet, the Omnitrix flickering between green and red as it approached energy depletion. Across the beach, Momo was creating what appeared to be a complex chemical delivery system, her expression focused despite the danger. You've got it wrong, Benjiro called, buying time as he selected his next transformation. She's not my weakness. She's my strength. He slammed down on the Omnitrix, transforming into Way Big, a towering alien form that matched the amalgam in size. The colossal transformation sent sand flying in all directions as Benjiro rose to full height. Oh my, Onimo observed from his perch. That is unexpected. Way Big engaged the amalgam directly, cosmic strength meeting chimeric power in a clash that shook the beach. Each impact created shockwaves that sent water retreating from the shore before crashing back in tsunami-like waves. From below, Momo implemented her plan. Using a launcher she'd created, she fired specialized chemical pods at precise points on the amalgam's body, the same integration junctions they'd identified earlier, but now targeted with compounds specifically designed to disrupt Elena's control mechanism. What are you doing? Elena hissed as the amalgam's movements became jerky and uncoordinated. Stop her. Benjiro capitalized on the disruption, channeling cosmic energy through Way Big's central fin and unleashing a devastating beam that struck the amalgam's core, where Elena's hybrid form maintained the integration. The combined assault, Momo's chemical disruption and Benjiro's cosmic attack, finally broke Elena's control. The amalgam collapsed, its component creatures separating into unconscious individual forms as Elena was violently ejected from the fusion. She crashed onto the beach, reverting to human form with the Zenimatrix sparking erratically on her wrist. Benjiro transformed back to human form as the Omnitrix reached critical depletion, dropping to one knee in exhaustion. Momo rushed to his side, supporting him with one arm while keeping a creation weapon trained on the downed Elena. No! Onimo wailed from the seawall. My perfect creation. It's over, Benjiro called to him. Surrender, Onimo. The scientist's face contorted with rage before settling into a disturbing smile. Perhaps this battle, Tennyson. But not our war. He raised his device again, this time pointing it at Elena's prone form. Some experiments require refinement. Before they could stop him, Onimo activated the device. A purple beam engulfed Elena, whose eyes snapped open in surprise or pain, it was impossible to tell which. The Zenimatrix on her wrist pulsed violently, synchronizing with Onimo's device as her body began to transform without conscious activation. What are you doing? She screamed, her form shifting rapidly between multiple hybrid states. Onimo. Stop this. Sacrifices must be made for scientific progress, my dear, Onimo replied dispassionately. Your DNA, merged with the Zenimatrix and my mutation accelerator, will create the perfect evolutionary catalyst. Benjiro staggered toward them, the Omnitrix still recharging. Onimo, you don't know what you're doing. Forced transformations are unstable. Precisely the point, the mad scientist cackled. Instability is the mother of evolution. Elena's body continued to transform uncontrollably, each shift more grotesque than the last as the Zenimatrix struggled to maintain coherent form parameters. Her screams became inhuman as her vocal structures mutated repeatedly. Momo analyzed the situation with remarkable composure. The device is overloading her Zenimatrix. If it continues, the energy buildup could create a dimensional rupture similar to what brought you to this universe. How do we stop it? Benjiro demanded, watching in horror as Elena's transformations accelerated. We need to separate her from the Zenimatrix, Momo concluded, already creating a specialized tool from her arm. The connection between device and user appears to be the catalyst. Benjiro looked down at the Omnitrix, still red, still recharging. I can't transform again yet. We need another approach. Momo handed him the tool she'd created, something resembling a sophisticated cutting instrument. This should disrupt the energy field between the Zenimatrix and her biological system. But someone needs to get close enough to use it. The implication was clear, approaching Elena in her current state was potentially suicidal. Energy discharges radiated from her transforming body, melting sand into glass and igniting nearby debris. "I'll do it," Benjiro said immediately. "No." Momo's voice was firm. "Without your transformations, you're vulnerable. I can create protective equipment." "It's too dangerous, which is exactly why it needs precision rather than power," she interrupted. "The tool requires exact placement. My quirk allows me to create exactly what's needed as circumstances change." Before Benjiro could argue further, pro-heroes arrived at the scene. The commotion had finally drawn official attention. Present Mike, Midnight, and several others established a perimeter while assessing the chaotic situation. "UA students," Midnight called. "Fall back immediately." "We can't," Benjiro shouted back. "That energy discharge is building toward critical mass. It needs to be contained now." Onimo, seeing his experiment threatened by hero intervention, increased the output of his device. "Yes. More power. Break the dimensional barriers." The situation deteriorated rapidly as Elena's transformations reached impossible speeds, her physical form becoming a blur of shifting matter and energy. The Zenimatrix glowed with increasing intensity, purple light coalescing into a swirling vortex around her. "It's becoming a dimensional rupture," Momo observed, her analytical mind processing implications even as she created protective gear around her body. "Similar to what brought you here." Benjiro looked from the rupture to Momo, sudden understanding dawning. "Or what could send me back?" Their eyes met in a moment of silent communication, horror, realization, and resolution passing between them. "Don't even think about it," Momo said firmly, reading his thoughts. "That rupture is unstable. There's no guarantee where it leads." "It's connected to the Zenimatrix," Benjiro reasoned. "Which is quantum entangled with the Omnitrix. The connection would be to my original universe." "Theoretically," she conceded, "but with significantly higher risks than your original transition." Around them, the pro-heroes were evacuating the area while attempting to contain the energy discharge. Onimo cackled madly from his perch, now surrounded by a protective field generated by his device. Decision crystallized in Benjiro's mind. "I have to stop this before the rupture expands. And there's only one way to do that." Before Momo could protest, he grabbed the tool she'd created and ran toward the swirling vortex that had once been Elena. The Omnitrix pulsed on his wrist, still recharging but responding to the proximity of its quantum counterpart. "Ben!" Momo's voice called from behind him, the sound nearly lost in the roar of dimensional energy. Reaching the edge of the vortex, Benjiro could barely make out Elena's form at its center, no longer recognizably human, but a shifting mass of alien DNA samples and quirk-influenced mutations, all held together by the overloading Zenimatrix. "Elena," he called. "I'm going to help you." Whether she heard or understood was unclear. The vortex pulsed violently, knocking Benjiro backward as reality itself seemed to warp around its perimeter. The Omnitrix suddenly shifted from red to green, responding to the dimensional energies. Without hesitation, Benjiro activated it, transforming into Alien X, the celestial being whose power had always been his last resort, capable of manipulating reality itself but requiring consensus between the multiple personalities that governed its power. The transformation was different this time, smoother, more integrated. Within the consciousness of Alien X, Benjiro found not the arguing voices of Serena and Bellicus that Ben had always contended with, but a unified awareness that seemed to incorporate aspects of both his lives. Interesting, the composite consciousness observed within Alien X's mind. The dimensional transition has altered the internal consensus mechanism. Integration rather than division. Can we stop the rupture? Benjiro asked his own transformed consciousness. We can do more than that, came the reply. We can heal it. But there will be consequences to such direct manipulation of dimensional boundaries. Alien X approached the vortex, cosmic hands extended toward the chaotic energy. With deliberate movements, the celestial being began to reshape the dimensional tear, containing its expansion while simultaneously extracting Elena's form from its center. The process required precision beyond normal comprehension, separating Elena's biological system from the Xenomatrix while maintaining the integrity of both dimensional planes that intersected at the rupture. Each movement reshaped reality on a quantum level, adjusting fundamental forces to counteract the instability. From outside the vortex, witnesses saw only Benjiro's Alien X form surrounded by swirling stars, hands extended toward the dimensional rupture as it gradually contracted. Within, Benjiro experienced existence across multiple planes simultaneously, seeing fragments of his original universe bleeding through the tear while maintaining his anchor in the current reality. Images flashed before him, Grandpa Max looking older, Gwen and Kevin working together, familiar aliens and worlds continuing without him. The sight brought both pain and peace, confirmation that life had gone on after his sacrifice, that his absence hadn't doomed his home universe. With careful precision, Alien X extracted Elena from the vortex core, separating her biological form from the Xenomatrix. The device, now untethered from its host, began to collapse in upon itself, drawing the dimensional rupture with it. The Xenomatrix will return to its origin point, Alien X's composite consciousness explained. Taking the rupture with it and sealing the breach between universes. And Onimo? Benjiro questioned. A choice must be made, came the reply. He can be captured here, or returned to the universe from which he came. The decision seemed clear. Onimo's knowledge of alien DNA and interdimensional travel made him too dangerous to remain in this quirk-filled world. With a gesture, Alien X extended cosmic awareness toward the mad scientist, whose protective field proved meaningless against a celestial being's power. No. My research. Onimo protested as he was lifted from his perch and drawn toward the collapsing rupture. You can't do this, Tennyson. I'm not sending you to prison this time, Onimo, Benjiro stated through Alien X's voice. I'm sending you home. With a final cosmic push, Onimo and his device were propelled into the collapsing vortex along with the destabilized Xenomatrix. The rupture contracted to a pinpoint before winking out of existence with a thunderclap of displacing air. The beach fell suddenly, eerily silent. Benjiro reverted from Alien X to human form, dropping to his knees in exhaustion. The Omnitrix, having channeled cosmic energies beyond its normal parameters, powered down completely, its display dark for the first time since appearing on his wrist. Ben. Momo's voice cut through his exhaustion as she ran to him, dropping to her knees beside him. Her hands cradled his face, checking for injuries with gentle urgency. Are you all right? What happened? It's done, he managed, leaning into her touch. Onimo and the Xenomatrix are gone, back to my original universe. The rupture is sealed. Her scientific mind processed implications immediately. Then the connection between universes is closed. Permanently. Benjiro nodded slowly. Alien X could see both sides. The breach is healed, no more interdimensional threats following me here. Relief and something more complex crossed Momo's features. You saw your home universe? I did. His voice softened. Life continued there. They're okay without me. Understanding dawned in her eyes. You could have gone back. No, Benjiro said with quiet certainty, taking her hands in his. That life ended when Ben Tennyson sacrificed himself. This is my life now, my home, my future. His eyes held hers steadily. With you, if you'll have me. The kiss Momo gave him was answer enough, fierce and tender simultaneously, heedless of the approaching pro-heroes or the unconscious form of Elena nearby. When they parted, both breathing heavily, Benjiro noticed the Omnitrix had begun to glow again, not its usual green, but a steady blue pulse. That's new, he observed, examining the device. Recalibration, perhaps. Momo suggested, her scientific curiosity immediately engaged despite the emotional moment. Before they could investigate further, they were surrounded by pro-heroes and emergency personnel. Elena, now unconscious but stable in human form, was secured for medical treatment and eventual custody. Questions came rapid-fire about the nature of the incident, the strange creatures, and Benjiro's extraordinary transformation. Through it all, they maintained their established cover story, though Benjiro suspected Aizawa and perhaps other faculty members were beginning to piece together the truth. Some secrets were too big to contain forever, especially in a world of professional heroes trained to observe and analyze. Days later, after medical clearance and extensive debriefing sessions, Benjiro and Momo finally had a quiet moment alone on UA's campus. They sat beneath a cherry tree in full summer bloom, the Omnitrix still pulsing with that unusual blue light on Benjiro's wrist. The energy readings have stabilized, Momo observed, scanning the device with one of her created instruments. But the signature is different from before, more integrated with your biological system. It feels different too, Benjiro admitted, studying the familiar yet altered device. More connected to me somehow. Less like technology and more like a part of me. The dimensional event may have accelerated the integration process, Momo theorized. Your consciousness, the Omnitrix, and your physical form achieving greater harmony. As if responding to her analysis, the Omnitrix suddenly projected a holographic interface, more stable and clear than ever before. A digitized voice spoke, dimensional stabilization complete. Omnitrix integration with host consciousness at optimal parameters. Master control unlocked. Benjiro's eyes widened. Master control. That's significant. What does it mean? Momo asked, studying the holographic display with fascination. In my fragmented memories, master control was the highest functionality level, Benjiro explained. Instantaneous transformations without time limits, access to all alien forms in the database, not just the active playlist. The hologram shifted to display a DNA helix intertwined with what appeared to be quirk factor analyses. Host genetic integration complete. Hybrid transformation capacities unlocked. Benjiro and Momo exchanged stunned glances. Is it saying what I think it's saying? He asked. It appears the Omnitrix has adapted to this universe's genetic parameters, Momo concluded, her scientific mind racing with implications. Potentially allowing transformations that incorporate quirk factors. To test the theory, Benjiro focused on the Omnitrix, mentally selecting a transformation without physically touching the device. Green light engulfed him instantly, transforming him into Heat Blast, but with subtle differences. The fire alien's form now incorporated aspects reminiscent of Endeavor's Hellflame quirk, with more controlled flame projection capabilities. Extraordinary, Momo breathed, creating a scanner to analyze the transformation. The alien DNA has integrated parameters from this world's quirk-based biology. Benjiro reverted to human form with just a thought, no dial manipulation or timeout. The master control makes everything seamless, he explained, still marveling at the development. And apparently the Omnitrix has been learning from this world all along. Adaptation at the quantum level, Momo nodded, excitement lighting her features. Your journey between universes has fundamentally evolved the Omnitrix itself. The implications were enormous, not just for Benjiro's capabilities as a hero, but for his identity. This final integration represented the true merger of Ben Tennyson and Benjiro Tenjo, no longer separate lives or fragmented memories, but a single, unified existence belonging fully to this world while honoring the legacy of another. So what happens now? Momo asked after they had experimented with several hybrid transformations, each displaying fascinating quirk-influenced modifications to the original alien forms. Benjiro took her hand, intertwining their fingers as they sat beneath the cherry blossoms. Now we continue what we started, becoming heroes, protecting people, facing whatever challenges come next. He smiled at her, feeling truly whole for the first time since awakening in this universe. Together. A logical conclusion, she agreed with a small smile that held infinite warmth. Though I expect our journey will be anything but conventional. When has it ever been? Benjiro laughed, pulling her closer. As summer deepened around UA, bringing training camps and new challenges for the hero course students, Benjiro embraced his unique path with newfound certainty. The memories of Ben Tennyson remained, valued experiences that shaped his perspective and abilities, but no longer felt like a separate life. This world, these people, this future with Momo at his side, this was where he belonged. The Omnitrix, now fully integrated with his being, represented not a visitor from another universe but a hero of this one, a perfect synthesis of alien technology and human heart, of otherworldly power and earthly purpose. Two heroes, one destiny. In the months that followed, as Class 1A faced new villains and greater challenges, rumors spread of UA's transformation hero whose quirk seemed to evolve with each appearance. Some whispered of aliens and other dimensions, theories that Benjiro and Momo neither confirmed nor denied. The truth remained their shared secret, a foundation of trust upon which they built both their hero careers and their deepening relationship. Elena, stripped of the Xenomatrix and extensively interviewed by hero agencies, eventually provided valuable intelligence on how her quirk had manifested after observing Benjiro's abilities. Rehabilitation offered her a second chance, one Benjiro supported, remembering how many of his old enemies had ultimately found redemption. On quiet evenings between hero training sessions, Benjiro sometimes gazed at the stars with Momo beside him, wondering about the universe he'd left behind. But any lingering doubts vanished in the warmth of her hand in his. In the future they were building together in this world that had become his true home. Ben Tennyson had saved his universe. Benjiro Tenjo would protect this one. With Momo Yaoyorozu at his side, both heroes would live on in one remarkable destiny. The end. Thank you for watching this video. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel and like this video.